Imagine a world cloaked in darkness, a world where the setting sun brought not peace, but a deep, primal fear. For our earliest ancestors, night was a time of immense danger. The air grew cold, and unseen predators lurked just beyond the edges of their perception. Survival was a constant, grueling battle against the elements and the creatures of the dark. This was the reality of prehistoric life, a life lived on a knife's edge. But then, something extraordinary happened. A bolt of lightning strikes a dry tree, or a spark from clashing rocks finds purchase in a bed of tinder. A tiny, flickering orange light is born. This wasn't just a light, it was a revolution. This was the first fire. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying deep into the past, back to a pivotal moment in human history that forever changed our destiny. We're talking about the moment we first tamed fire. It's a story so fundamental to our existence that it's easy to overlook its profound impact. But mastering fire wasn't just about getting warm. It was about security, community, and the very dawn of what we now call civilization. So, gather around our digital campfire and let us explore how this single element ignited the human spirit and set us on the path to becoming who we are today. Before fire, the daily cycle was dictated by the sun. Daylight was for a frantic search for food hunting, gathering, and scavenging. Nightfall meant retreat, huddling together in caves or crude shelters, hoping to survive until morning. The cold was a relentless enemy, seeping into bones and making sleep a dangerous gamble. And the sounds of the night, the snap of a twig, the distant roar, a constant reminder of the threats that lay in wait. The world was big, and early humans were a very small, very vulnerable part of it. Their senses, though sharp, were no match for the complete sensory deprivation of a moonless night. Then came the flame. It is difficult for us to truly comprehend the awe and terror our ancestors must have felt when they first encountered fire. Initially, it would have been a natural phenomenon of forest fire, a volcanic eruption, a force of pure destruction. But somewhere along the line, a brave or perhaps just desperate individual made a crucial discovery. This terrifying force could be controlled. Perhaps they managed to carry a burning branch back to their camp from a lightning strike. The act of keeping that ember alive, feeding it with dry leaves and twigs, would have been one of the first great technological challenges. The immediate benefit was warmth. For the first time, our ancestors could ward off the biting chill of the night. This wasn't just about comfort. It was about survival. Staying warm conserved precious calories that were incredibly hard to come by. It meant a lower risk of hypothermia and a better chance of waking up to see the next sunrise. The fire became a central hearth, a beacon of life in the cold, unforgiving landscape. It extended the day, pushing back the oppressive darkness and giving our ancestors more time. But the warmth was just the beginning. The light of the fire was a powerful shield. Predators like saber-tooth, cats and cave bears, which relied on the cover of darkness to hunt, were instinctively wary of the flames. A circle of fire created a zone of safety, a sanctuary where the group could rest without constant fear of attack. This newfound security was transformative. It meant less stress and more energy could be dedicated to other things. It allowed for deeper, more restorative sleep, which in turn would have had a massive impact on cognitive development. A well-rested brain is a more capable brain. With safety and warmth secured, another incredible door opened. The culinary one. Cooking food was a game changer. Raw meat is tough to chew and difficult to digest. It also carries a high risk of parasites and bacteria. By cooking meat over the fire, our ancestors made it easier to consume and safer to eat. But more importantly, cooking unlocks nutrients. It breaks down tough fibers and proteins, making it easier for the body to absorb a higher concentration of calories and energy. Some anthropologists argue that this dietary shift was a key catalyst for the evolution of our large, complex brains. Our brains are incredibly energy-hungry organs, and the cooked food diet provided the high-quality fuel necessary to power their growth. It wasn't just meat, either. Cooking starchy roots and tubers made them digestible, opening up a whole new range of reliable food sources. So, the fire is providing warmth, safety, and a better diet. But its impact goes even deeper, right into the heart of our social structure. The campfire became the world's first living room. Before, the group would scatter and huddle in the dark. Now, they had a central point together, around the flickering flames. They were no longer just a collection of individuals. They became a community. This is where a shared culture began to truly blossom. The fire didn't just illuminate Nihove faces, it illuminated their minds. With the immediate threats held at bay, people had time to think, to communicate, and to connect on a deeper level. The hours after a hunt, once spent in anxious darkness, could now be filled with activity. This was the time for tool making. Under the reliable light of the fire, our ancestors could chip away at flint with greater precision, crafting more effective spearheads, scrapers, and hand axes. The quality and complexity of their tools began to improve Rupas, leading to more successful hunts and better processing of resources. And most importantly, this is where a rich oral tradition was born. As the flames danced and cast long shadows on the cave walls, elders would share a knowledge. They'd recount the events of the day's hunt, plan for the next, and pass down vital survival skills to the younger generation. But they would also tell stories. They would create myths to explain the mysteries of the world, the moon, the thunder. They would share tales of heroic ancestors and cunning animals. This was the birth of narrative, of art, of religion. The fire was the first stage, and the storyteller was the first performer. These shared stories bonded the group together, creating a common identity and a collective memory that transcended the individual lifespan. It was in the firelight that we first started asking the big questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? What is our place in the universe? The control of fire, therefore, wasn't just a technological leap. It was a psychological and social one. It gave us control over our environment in a way that no other species had ever achieved. It allowed us to expand our territories, moving into colder climates that would have been previously uninhabitable. It was the first step in reshaping the world to suit our needs, rather than simply adapting to it. This newfound power and confidence fueled innovation and exploration. The hearth became the heart of the home, the anchor of the community, and the incubator for human culture. From that first uncertain spark, a chain reaction was set off that continues to this day. Our modern world is, in many ways, built upon that ancient foundation. Our power plants are, in essence, giant, sophisticated fires. The internal combustion engine that powers our cars is a series of controlled explosions. The central heating in our homes is a direct descendant of that first campfire. Even our social gatherings, from a backyard barbecue to a group of friends chatting in a cafe, echo the ancient impulse to gather around a source of warmth and light to share food, stories, and companionship. The next time you see a flickering candle, a cozy fireplace, or even the flame on your gas stove, take a moment to reflect. You're looking at the same element that our ancestors tamed hundreds of thousands of years ago. You're looking at the light that banished the darkness, the warmth that conquered the cold, and the energy that fueled the rise of humanity. It's a powerful reminder of our ingenuity, our resilience, and the deep, ancient connection we all share to that very first fire. Imagine a world without engines, a time when the horizon was an intimidating mystery. For thousands of years, humanity looked out at the vast, shimmering expanse of the ocean and saw only a barrier. We hugged the coastlines, our journeys limited by the strength of our own arms paddling against the current. The sea was a powerful, untamable force, a realm of gods and monsters. But then, something shifted. A simple, yet revolutionary idea sparked in the mind of an early explorer. An idea that would not just change travel, but would forever alter the course of human history. This is the story of that idea. This is the story of the first sail. Our story begins long before the grand galleons and majestic clippers we imagine. It starts with a humble raft, perhaps made of reeds or logs lashed together. Picture our ancestors pushing off from the shore, their world defined by the land they could see. Travel was slow, laborious. Crossing a wide river was a major undertaking. The open sea that was a frontier beyond imagination. But humans are observers. We watch, we learn, we adapt. Early sailors would have felt the wind on their faces, a constant companion on the water. They would have seen how it pushed ripples across the surface, how it rustled the leaves on the trees along the shore. They would have noticed how a loose piece of animal hide or a large leaf caught the breeze, pulling and tugging with an unseen force. This is where the magic happens. Someone, somewhere, made the connection. What if we could capture that force? What if, Instead of fighting the elements, we could partner with them. The first attempts were likely clumsy and small. Perhaps a sailor held up a large animal skin to catch a tailwind, feeling a sudden, thrilling surge of speed. It wouldn't have been elegant, but it would have been a revelation. For the first time, they weren't just fighting the water. They were dancing with the wind. The energy they saved, the distance they could cover, must have felt like harnessing a wild spirit. From these simple beginnings, innovation took root. Early civilizations like the ancient Egyptians were among the first to master this new technology. Around 3200 BC, they were already using simple, square sails on their reed boats, navigating the Nile River. These weren't the complex rigging systems of later eras. They were single, square pieces of cloth, likely made from woven papyrus or linen, attached to a simple mast. These sails were most effective with a direct tailwind, pushing the boat forward. Steering was still done with large oars at the stern, but the sail provided the power. It was again. Suddenly, the Nile wasn't just a river, it was a highway. Trade flourished, goods, people, and ideas could travel up and down the river with unprecedented speed and efficiency. The sail wasn't just a tool for travel, it was a catalyst for civilization. As knowledge spread, different cultures adapted the sail to their own needs and environments. In the Pacific, the Polynesians were developing their own incredible sailing technology. They created the outrigger canoe, a stable and swift vessel. But their true genius was the crab claw sail. This triangular sail was far more versatile than the square sails of the Egyptians. It allowed them to sail closer to the wind, a technique known as tacking. This meant they were no longer completely dependent on having the wind directly behind them. They could zigzag against the wind, opening up vast new stretches of ocean to explore. This innovation is what allowed the Polynesians to undertake some of the most daring voyages in human history, settling remote islands scattered across thousands of miles of open water. From Hawaii to Easter Island to New Zealand, all guided by the stars and the feel of the wind on their sails. Meanwhile, back in the Mediterranean, the Greeks and Romans were also pushing the boundaries of sail technology. They refined the square sail, adding more complex rigging to control its shape and catch the wind more effectively. Their massive grain ships, powered by enormous single sails, became the lifeline of the Roman Empire, transporting vital food supplies from Egypt to Rome. They built lighthouses to guide these ships home, creating a sophisticated maritime network that was the backbone of their economy. The sail had transformed the Mediterranean from a collection of isolated coastlines into a single, interconnected sea. A Roman lake. The evolution of the sail continued through the Middle Ages. The Vikings, with their legendary longships, combined the power of the sail with the flexibility of oars. Their square sails allowed them to cross the brutal North Atlantic, while their shallow hulls and rowing capabilities let them raid far upriver, deep into the heart of Europe. They reached North America centuries before Columbus, a testament to their incredible seamanship. and the power of their simple, effective sails. Then, a crucial development came from the Islamic world: the lateen sail. This triangular sail, mounted at an angle on the mast, was even more effective at sailing against the wind than the Polynesian crab claw. When European sailors adopted the lateen sail during the late Middle Ages, it sparked a new era of exploration. This brings us to the age of discovery. Shipbuilders began combining different types of sails on a single vessel. They put the reliable square sails on the main masts for power and speed with the following wind, and added the nimble lateen sails on the rear masts for maneuverability. This combination created ships like the Caravel and the Carrack vessels that were fast, agile, and capable of long-distance ocean voyage. These were the ships that carried explorers like Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Magellan across uncharted oceans. For the first time in history, the entire globe was within reach. The sail had connected continents, mingled cultures, and created a truly global network of trade and communication. Of course, this era also brought conquest and conflict, but its driving force was this incredible technology born from a simple observation. Think about it. Every journey of discovery, every trade route, established every new world encountered across the ocean for thousands of years, was made possible by that first person who decided to hold up a piece of hide and let the wind do the work. It's a profound testament to human ingenuity. The ability to see a force of nature not as an obstacle, but as an ally. The courage to let go of the shore and trust in a piece of cloth and a gust of wind to carry you toward the horizon. The history of the sail is the history of our own curiosity, our courage, and our unyielding desire to see what lies beyond. It is a story of how we learn to listen to the world around us and work with it rather than against it. From a simple raft to the complex tall ships, the journey of the sail is one of humanity's greatest adventures. So, the next time you see a sailboat gliding effortlessly across the water, take a moment to appreciate the thousands of years of innovation and courage it represents. It's more than just a boat. It's a symbol of our connection to the planet and our endless quest for discovery. Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this journey back in time. See you next time. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a city of marble and sunlight perched on the edge of the Mediterranean. Imagine a place where the greatest minds of the ancient world gathered, not for war or for trade, but for one singular purpose: to collect all the knowledge of humanity under one roof. This wasn't a fantasy. This was Alexandria, and at its heart was a wonder that still captures our imagination today. The great Library of Alexandria. This wasn't just a building with a few shelves. This was an idea, a grand, audacious dream, founded by Ptolemy I, a successor to Alexander the Great, around the 3rd century BC. The library was more than a repository. It was a research institute, a university, a vibrant intellectual hub. Think of it as the Silicon Valley of the ancient world. But instead of coding, they were decoding the universe. The scale of it is almost impossible to comprehend. Estimates vary, but scholars believe it held anywhere from 40,000 to over 400,000 scrolls. Every single one of these was a handwritten masterpiece. Parchment and papyrus filled with the wisdom of Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and beyond. This wasn't just a collection, it was a mission. Ptolemy's decree was legendary. Scribes would then frantically copy the texts. The originals were kept for the library, and the fresh copies were returned to the owners. Imagine that. The world's knowledge was literally being vacuumed into this one incredible place. So what was actually inside? Everything. The complete works of Homer, Plato, and Socrates, foundational texts of mathematics by Euclid, who himself taught in Alexandria. His book, Elements, is still a basis for geometry today. There was Aristarchus of Samos, who proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, nearly 2,000 years before Copernicus. There was Eratosthenes, a true genius who was the head librarian. He not only calculated the circumference of the Earth with astonishing accuracy, but he also invented the system of latitude and longitude we still use. He did this with sticks, shadows, and brilliant math. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were plays, poetry, histories, medical texts, astronomical charts, philosophical treatises. Imagine walking through its halls. You'd hear dozens of languages being spoken. You'd see scholars bent over scrolls, debating the nature of the cosmos in one corner, while in another, doctors dissected human bodies for the first time, revolutionizing our understanding of anatomy. The very air must have crackled with intellectual energy. It was here that the Hebrew Bible was first translated into Greek. The Septuagint, a monumental task that made these texts accessible to the wider world. The library was part of a larger complex called the Musam, or Institution of the Muses. It had lecture halls, gardens, a zoo, and dining halls, where scholars ate and debated together, all funded by the royal treasury. They were essentially given lifelong grants to just think. And It was a paradise for thinkers, a place where curiosity wasn't just encouraged. It was the entire point. But if this place was so magnificent, so important, ... Where is it? This is where the story turns tragic and becomes a cautionary tale. The decline and fall of the library wasn't a single dramatic event like a meteor strike. It was a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts stretched over centuries. The first major blow came during Julius Caesar's civil war in 48 BC. Caesar was besieged in Alexandria and, in the fighting, set fire to his own ships in the harbor. The fire spread, and it's believed a significant portion of the library, or at least a warehouse containing scrolls destined for it, was destroyed. Imagine the smoke rising over the city, carrying with it irreplaceable knowledge. The Roman philosopher Seneca later wrote that 40,000 scrolls were burned, while the library survived this. It was a devastating wound. Over the next few centuries, things just got worse. The intellectual climate began to change. Roman rule brought new priorities. Budgets were cut. In the 3rd century AD, the Emperor Aurelian, while crushing a revolt in Alexandria, destroyed the part of the city where the main library was located. What was left was likely housed in a smaller daughter library at the Temple of Serapis, known as the But even this sanctuary wasn't safe. The final, most symbolic blow came in 391 AD. By this time, the Roman Empire had become Christian. Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, saw the Serapeum and its pagan scrolls as a threat to his faith. With the emperor's blessing, he led a mob that ransacked and destroyed the temple. Whatever scrolls remained were likely scattered or burned. It was the tragic end of an era, an act of cultural destruction driven by zealotry, where the pursuit of one truth led to the annihilation of thousands of others. So what did we lose? It's impossible to say for sure. And that's what is so heartbreaking. We lost entire histories of ancient civilizations. We lost scientific discoveries that could have pushed humanity forward by centuries. How many plays by Sophocles or Euripides are gone forever? We know of hundreds, but only a handful survive. We lost philosophical arguments, medical knowledge, and maps of the ancient world. It's like a massive part of our collective human memory was erased. Think about Eratosthenes calculating the Earth's circumference. That knowledge was lost to the Western world for over 1,000 years until it was rediscovered during the Renaissance. For a millennium, we believed the world was smaller than it is, all because the work done in Alexandria was forgotten. How many other rediscoveries were actually just us catching up to what the scholars in Alexandria already knew? The story of the Library of Alexandria is more than just a history lesson. It's a reminder of how fragile knowledge is and how easily it can be lost to war, neglect, and intolerance. It teaches us the importance of preserving information, of fostering open inquiry, and of valuing curiosity above dogma. The dream of Alexandria was to unite the world through understanding, to build a global community of shared knowledge. But the dream isn't entirely dead. Today, in the same city, stands the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, a stunning modern library and cultural center built in honor of the original. It's a magnificent building, a disc tilted toward the sea like a rising sun. It's a testament to the enduring power of that ancient idea. And in a way, the internet is the modern library of Alexandria, vast, decentralized network holding a staggering amount of human knowledge. The challenge for us is to be good librarians, to curate it, to protect it from misinformation, and to use it not to divide, but to connect and enlighten. The whisper of those ancient scrolls can still be heard if we listen closely. It's in every book we open, every scientific paper we read, every time we ask why. The great Library of Alexandria may be gone, but its spirit, the relentless human quest for knowledge, is more alive than ever. Let's make sure we protect it. Have you ever stood in the quiet of a vast, stardusted night and felt the weight of history all around you? Tonight, we're not just looking up at the cosmos, we're looking back through time, walking along the spine of the dragon, the Great Wall of China, as it slumbers beneath a blanket of stars. Imagine a time long before our modern world, a time of emperors and dynasties, of nomadic threats and the deep-seated need for protection. The story of the Great Wall isn't just one of stone and mortar. It's a human story etched into the very landscape of the earth. It began not as the single monumental structure we know today, but as a series of disparate fortifications, earthen mounds, and lonely watch. States like Qian and Zhao built these early walls, each trying to secure their own borders from rival states and northern tribes. These weren't grand tourist attractions. They were raw, desperate lines drawn in the sand. Then came a man who would change everything. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. In the 3rd century BCE, he envisioned something far grander. He saw a single, continuous barrier, a testament to the power and unity of his new empire. He connected and expanded the existing walls, creating the first version of what we now recognize as the Great Wall. This was an undertaking of unimaginable scale. Think about it. No modern machinery, no cranes, no power tools, just human hands, determination, and a staggering amount of sweat and sacrifice. Under the cold, watchful eyes of the moon and stars, hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions, of people toiled. There were soldiers, convicts, and common folk conscripted into this monumental task. We often hear of the wall as a symbol of strength, but we must also remember it as a place of immense hardship. The saying that for every stone laid, a life was lost speaks volumes about the human cost. These weren't just laborers. They were fathers, sons, and brothers, shaping a legacy with their bare hands, far from their homes. Their footsteps, soft on the moonlit earth, were the first beats in the long, rhythmic construction of this wonder. As dynasties rose and fell, the wall evolved. The Han Dynasty pushed it further west into the unforgiven Gobi Desert, creating a vital corridor for the Silk Road. They refined its design, building intricate watchtowers and beacon systems. Imagine a network of signals, fire by day and smoke by night, that could transmit a message across hundreds of miles in just a few hours. It was the internet of its time, a lifeline of communication stretching across the empire's vast frontier. Each tower was a lonely outpost, a tiny island of vigilance in a sea of wilderness, each garrison staring out into the star-filled darkness, ever watchful. But the wall wasn't a static object. It was a living, breathing part of the landscape and the culture. It was fought over, breached, abandoned, and rebuilt time and time again. There were periods when it fell into disrepair, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. Then a new threat or a new dynasty would breathe life back into its stones. The most famous and well-preserved sections we see today are largely the work of the Ming dynasty from the 14th to the 17th century. Faced with renewed threats from Mongol tribes, the Ming emperors launched the most ambitious wall-building project in history. They replaced the old rammed earth constructions with stronger brick and stone. They fortified it with massive forts, cannons, and complex gateways. The Ming Wall is a masterpiece of military engineering, a winding fortress that snakes over treacherous mountains and plunges into deep valleys. Let's stand here now on one of its ancient watchtowers. The air is still and cool below. The world is asleep. Above, the Milky Way arches across the sky like a celestial river. In this profound silence, you can almost hear the echoes of the past, the clang of a hammer against stone, the whispered conversations of centuries huddled against the cold, the urgent shouts as a beacon is lit, its flame a single, defiant star against the encroaching darkness. Each stone beneath our feet has a story. This one might have been hauled up a steep mountainside on the back of a man who dreamed of his family. That one might have been set in place by a soldier who scanned the horizon for the dust of an approaching army. These aren't just building materials. They're artifacts of human experience, infused with the hopes, fears, and resilience of generations. Gazing out from the wall at night is a humbling experience. The sheer scale of it is hard to comprehend. It's not just a wall. It's a testament to what humanity can achieve through collective will, for better or worse. It represents a desire for security, a definition of us versus them, a physical manifestation of a civilization's identity. But it's also a monument to the countless individuals whose names are lost to history, but whose labor created something that has endured for millennia. As the constellations slowly wheel across the sky, the Great Wall becomes more than just a structure. It transforms into a bridge between the heavens and the earth, between the past and the present. It reminds us of our own smallness in the face of the cosmos, but also of our incredible capacity for creation and endurance. The same stars that guided the ancient builders and watchmen now shine down on us connecting us directly to their long-forgotten nights. For centuries, this wall was a barrier. It was meant to keep people out, to divide worlds. But tonight, under the shed canopy of stars, it feels different. It feels like a point of connection. It connects us to the incredible history of a nation, to the stories of the millions who built it, and to the timeless, silent beauty of the universe. It teaches us that even the most formidable barriers can eventually become bridges, connecting people not by keeping them apart, but by sharing a story so immense it belongs to all of us. As dawn approaches, the first faint light will begin to erase the stars, and the wall will once again reveal its rugged, earthly form. But the memory of it under the cosmos will remain. A silent stone dragon, sleeping under a river of stars, dreaming of the footsteps and heartbeats that gave it life. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just in books. It's written in stone, and it's waiting to be read in the quiet moments, under the vast, silent watch of the night sky. Have you ever wondered what the pharaohs dreamed of? It wasn't just about catching some Z's. For the ancient Egyptians, sleep was a sacred journey, a bridge between the world of the living and the realm of the gods. It was a time when the soul, or the Ba, could leave the body and travel to other dimensions. This wasn't just folklore, it was a core belief that shaped their entire civilization, from the spells they cast to the grand tombs they built. Today, we're venturing deep into the heart of ancient Egypt to uncover the secrets of their slumber. We'll explore how sleep was seen not as an end, but as a beginning, a rehearsal for the afterlife, and a direct line to divine wisdom. Forget what you think you know about mummies and curses. We're going to explore the much more fascinating world of Egyptian dream interpretation, sleep rituals, and their profound connection to eternity. So, get comfortable as we decode the sleep of the pharaohs. Let's start with the basics. In our modern world, we often see sleep as a necessity for physical and mental rest. For the Egyptians, it was that and so much more. They believed the body was a vessel, and during sleep, the Ba, often depicted as a human-headed bird, was set free. It would soar through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, encountering gods, spirits, and even the deceased. These nightly travels were filled with both opportunities and dangers to protect the sleeping body and the wandering soul. Egyptians relied on a whole arsenal of magical tools. Amulets were incredibly popular. The ankh, symbolizing life, was a common charm placed near the bed. The Eye of Horus, or Wajet, was another powerful symbol of protection, healing, and restoration. They believed it could ward off evil spirits and nightmares that might try to harm the sleeper. They also recited spells and prayers before bed, asking gods like Base, the dwarf god and protector of households, to stand guard. These weren't just superstitions. They were practical steps in their daily spiritual hygiene, ensuring a safe passage through the night. Now, let's talk about their beds. You might be surprised to learn that many Egyptians, including the wealthy, didn't use pillows like we do. Instead, they rested their heads on a curved headrest, usually carved from wood, ivory, or stone. It might sound uncomfortable, but it served several purposes. It elevated the head, allowing for better air circulation in the hot climate. More importantly, it was believed to magically protect the sleeper's head, which they considered the most vulnerable part of the body, from malevolent forces. These headrests were often inscribed with protective spells and images of deities, turning a simple piece of furniture into a powerful magical object. They were so important that they were even placed in tombs to be used in the afterlife. But what happened when the Ba returned to the body at dawn? It brought back messages, visions, and warnings in the form of dreams. Dreams were not random thoughts. They were direct communications from the gods. Interpreting them was a serious business. So much so that they had special priests, known as the Masters of the Secret Things, who specialized in dream analysis. We know this from texts like the Dream Papyrus, an ancient manuscript that is essentially a dream dictionary. This papyrus lists various dreams and their meanings. For example, if an Egyptian dreamed of seeing a large cat, it was a good omen, signaling a bountiful harvest. Dreaming of drinking warm beer, however, was a bad sign, foretelling suffering. The interpretations were often based on wordplay in the ancient Egyptian language. The priests would analyze the symbols and the dreamer's life situation to provide guidance. A pharaoh's dream could influence state policy, military campaigns, or religious ceremonies. The fate of the entire kingdom could literally rest on a dream. One of the most famous dream stories from ancient Egypt, though technically about a future pharaoh, is the dream stele of Thut. The story goes that before he became king, Prince Thutmose went hunting and fell asleep in the shadow of the great Sphinx of Giza, which was at that time buried up to its neck in sand. In his dream, the Sphinx, representing the sun god Raharakti, spoke to him. The god promised to make him pharaoh if he would clear away the sand that was suffocating him. When Thutmose woke up, he did as he was asked, excavated the Sphinx, and sure enough, he eventually ascended to the throne. He commemorated this divine encounter by placing a large granite slab, the dream stele, between the Sphinx's paws, where it still stands today. This story perfectly illustrates the power and legitimacy that dreams conferred in their culture. This reverence for sleep and dreams was intrinsically linked to their most famous cultural obsession, the afterlife. For the Egyptians, death was not an end but a transition into an eternal sleep. The goal was to become an ark, a transfigured spirit, and live forever in the field of reeds, a paradise-like version of Egypt. The entire process of mummification and the elaborate tomb rituals were designed to ensure this transition was successful. Think of the tomb as the ultimate bedroom. It was called the House of Eternity. It was filled with everything the deceased would need for their eternal slumber. Food, furniture, tools, and even their beloved headrests. The coffin itself was a protective shell, often shaped like a human, and covered in magical texts from the Book of the Dead. These texts were essentially a guidebook for the soul, providing the spells and knowledge needed to navigate the dangers of the underworld and pass the final judgment. The mummy, the preserved body, was the anchor to which the Ba and another part of the soul, the Ka, or life force, could return each night. Without the physical body, the soul would have no home and would be lost forever. So, the sleep they experienced each night was a micro version of this grand eternal sleep. Every time they closed their eyes, they were practicing for their journey into the afterlife. The nightly separation and reunification of the body and soul mirrored the final separation at death and the hope of an eternal spiritual existence. Their entire life was a preparation for this ultimate rest. This perspective is so different from our modern view, where sleep is often seen as lost time, something to be optimized or even reduced in the name of productivity. The Egyptians honored rest. They understood its restorative power not just for the body, but for the soul. It was a sacred, liminal space where the veil between worlds was thin, offering wisdom, protection, and a glimpse of eternity. In a way, their tombs were the most sophisticated sleep sanctuaries ever created. Every detail, from the orientation of the tomb to the images painted on the walls, was designed to protect and sustain the deceased in their eternal slumber. The scenes of farming, feasting, and family life weren't just decorations. They were magical provisions, ensuring the deceased could enjoy all the good things of life forever. It was the ultimate manifestation of rest in peace. So, the next time you feel tired and lie down to sleep, take a moment to think about the ancient Egyptians. For them, you wouldn't just be shutting down for the night. You'd be embarking on a sacred journey, a voyage into the mystical realms of the mind and spirit. They teach us that sleep is not a void, but a rich, meaningful part of our existence, a time for connection, renewal, and perhaps a little bit of magic. What they revered as the Sleep of Pharaohs was a profound acceptance of the cycles of life. Death and rebirth all played out in the quiet hours of the night. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the endless dunes, the Silk Road transforms. The scorching heat of the day gives way to a gentle, cooling breeze, and a different kind of life begins to stir. This is the magic hour, a time of rest, reflection, and connection. All along this ancient network of trade routes, from the bustling markets of Chang'an to the shores of the Mediterranean, caravans would halt their slow, steady march. The day's journey is over, but the story of the Silk Road is just beginning for the night. camels, the true ships of the desert, groan and settle onto the sand. Their long-lashed eyes, half closed in well-deserved age, their loads precious silks, fragrant spices, gleaming jewels, and exotic goods from faraway lands are carefully secured for the night. Fires are kindled, their flames leaping up to greet the first stars that prick the deepening twilight sky. The crackle of burning wood and the soft murmur of voices create a symphony of peace after a day of arduous travel. This is the moment when the Silk Road truly comes alive, not with the commerce of goods, but with the trade of something far more valuable. Stories. Around these flickering campfires, a temporary, multicultural community is formed. Sogdian merchants, with their distinctive hats and quick, calculating eyes, sit beside stoic Persian traders. A Buddhist monk on his pilgrimage to the West might share a piece of flatbread with a Nestorian Christian missionary. You'd find Uyghur horse traders, Jewish financiers, and Han Chinese officials all gathered together, their differences momentarily forgotten in the shared experience of the journey. The air fills with a medley of aroma. The rich, earthy scent of brewing tea mingles with the spicy fragrance of a communal stew simmering over the fire. This isn't just any tea. It's often brick tea, compressed and easy to transport, a valuable commodity in its own right. The ritual of preparing and sharing tea is a cornerstone of this evening's society. Water drawn from a precious oasis well is seated in a pot. The tea is broken off, crumbled into the boiling water, and often mixed with salt, milk, or butter, creating a nourishing, revitalizing brew that replenishes the energy lost to the desert sun. Passing a bowl of the salt, savory tea from hand to hand is more than just quenching thirst. It's an act of camaraderie, a gesture of trust and goodwill. It breaks down the barriers of language and culture. A simple nod and a shared sip can say more than 1,000 words. It's in these moments of shared sustenance that strangers become traveling companions, and companions become friends. And then the stories begin. A merchant from Samarkand, his face weathered by years on the road, might recount a close encounter with bandits in the treacherous mountain passes of the Pamirs. His voice, low and steady, holds everyone captive as he describes the glint of steel in the moonlight and the clever ruse that saved his caravan. His audience, men and women who know these dangers all too well, listen with rapt attention, nodding in understanding, perhaps learning a new trick to survive their own future encounters. A young traveler, perhaps on his first major journey, might speak of the wonders he's seen. He describes the magnificent, towering Buddhas of Bamiyan, carved into the cliffside, their serene faces watching over the valley. He talks about the vibrant bazaars of Kashgar, a kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and smells, where you could find anything your heart desired. His eyes shine with the thrill of discovery, and his youthful enthusiasm is contagious, reminding the veteran travelers of their own first adventures. Languages swirl and mix around the fire. A story might start in Sogdian, be translated into Persian by a bilingual trader, and then relayed in a simplified form of Turkic to others. Gestures become a universal language. Hands illustrate the size of a giant wave in a distant sea, the steepness of a mountain path, or the beauty of a princess in a faraway kingdom. Laughter erupts, a shared universal sound that needs no translation. As someone tells a funny tale about a stubborn camel or a misunderstanding in a foreign market, it's not just tales of adventure in commerce. They share. News from the imperial court in the east. News of shifting alliances in the west. A traveler might bring word of a new dynasty, a new invention, or a new philosophy taking root hundreds of miles away. The Silk Road isn't just a conduit for goods. It's the world's first information superhighway. And these evening gatherings are its bustling forums. Information is as valuable as silk, and a reliable piece of news could change a merchant's fortune. They also share knowledge of the road itself. Where is the next oasis with sweet water? Which mountain passes are currently blocked by snow? Is a certain local chieftain friendly or hostile to caravans? This practical information is vital for survival. Maps are drawn in the sand with a stick. Routes are debated and advice is freely given. This collective pool of knowledge, updated daily by those who travel it, is what keeps the arteries of the Silk Road flowing. As the night deepens, the mood might turn more personal. A musician might pull out a dutar or a sitar, its soulful strings weaving a melody that speaks of longing, of home, of loves left behind. The music transcends language, touching a chord in every heart. Someone might sing a folk song from their village, a tune filled with nostalgia for green fields and familiar faces, a stark contrast to the vast, empty desert surrounding them. In these quiet moments, they share more than just stories of the road. They share stories of their lives, their families, their hopes, and their fears. The merchant might speak of a child he hasn't seen in a year. The monk might share a piece of wisdom from his scriptures, offering comfort and perspective in the immense, indifferent wilderness. These human connections are an anchor, a reminder that they are part of something larger than their own solitary journey. This daily ritual is the very soul of the Silk Road. It's what transforms a grueling, dangerous trek into a profound human experience. It's where cultures don't just collide, but converse, blend, and enrich one another. A piece of Chinese poetry might find its way into a Persian song. A medical technique from India could be learned by a trader from Antioch. Beliefs, ideas, and artistic styles are exchanged as freely as the tea. As the fire burns down to glowing embers and the moon climbs high in the sky, a comfortable silence settles over the camp. One by one, the travelers wrap themselves in their blankets, finding a spot to rest under the vast, stardusted canopy. The camels are quiet silhouettes against the dunes. The stories are done for the night, but they will be carried onward the next day, shared at the next campfire, becoming part of the ever-growing legend of the Silk Road. The journey is long and the destinations are far apart, but here, in the fleeting community of a desert dusk, they find a temporary home. Imagine standing on the shores of the ancient world, looking out at the vast, unpredictable Mediterranean Sea. For centuries, sailors navigated by the stars, the sun, and familiar coastlines. But what happened when storms rolled in, when the night was moonless, or when thick fog descended? For many, it meant disaster. Ships laden with precious cargo, and even more, precious lives were often dashed against hidden rocks or lost completely in a disorienting haze. This was the reality for sailors approaching one of the busiest, most magnificent ports of the ancient world, Alexandria in Egypt. But then, something changed. A new star appeared on the horizon, one that wasn't in the heavens. It was a man-made star, a brilliant flame burning atop a colossal tower, piercing through the darkest nights and the thickest fog. This wasn't just any beacon. This was the Lighthouse of Pharos, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For over 1,000 years, its light was a symbol of hope, a promise of safety, and a testament to human ingenuity. Today, we're going to journey back in time to rediscover the story of this incredible structure, its rise, its long life, and its eventual tragic fall. Our story begins in the 4th century BCE with one of history's most famous figures, Alexander the Great. After conquering Egypt, he founded a new city on the coast in 332 BCE. He named it, of course, Alexandria. Alexander had a vision for a grand metropolis, a center of trade, culture, and learning that would connect the Greek world with the riches of the East. And he chose the perfect spot. But there was a problem. The coastline around Alexandria was flat and treacherous, with numerous sandbanks and reefs lurking just beneath the water's surface. A great port needed a great guide, something to make navigating these dangerous waters possible. Alexander himself didn't live to see his city fully realized, but his vision was carried on by his trusted general, Ptolemy I Sota, who became the ruler of Egypt. Ptolemy and his successors, the Ptolemaic dynasty, were determined to make Alexandria the most glorious city on earth. They built the legendary Library of Alexandria, the Museum, and turned the city into an intellectual powerhouse. And to secure its economic might, they needed to solve the navigation problem. The solution came from Ptolemy's son, Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, around 280 BCE. He commissioned the construction of a monumental lighthouse on the small island of Pharos, which was connected to the mainland by a man-made causeway. The project was entrusted to a brilliant Greek architect and engineer named Sostratus of Cnidus. The scale of this undertaking was simply staggering for the time. Think about it. Without modern cranes, power tools, or reinforced concrete, they were about to build what would be one of the tallest man-made structures in the world for centuries to come. The Lighthouse of Pharos wasn't built overnight. It's believed to have taken around 12 years to complete, at a cost that was truly astronomical, an estimated 800 talents of silver. To put that in perspective, that was a significant fraction of the entire kingdom's annual revenue. It was a statement. This wasn't just a functional building. It was a symbol of the wealth, power, and technological prowess of Ptolemaic Egypt. So, what did it actually look like? While the lighthouse is long gone, we have descriptions from ancient writers like Strabo and Pliny the Elder, as well as depictions on Roman coins and later Arab accounts. Piecing these clues together, historians and archaeologists have created a picture of a truly majestic tower. It stood on a massive stone platform and was constructed in 3 distinct tiers. The lowest section was a huge, square base, about 100 feet high. It was said to be filled with countless rooms for the workers and soldiers who manned the lighthouse, as well as ramps for hauling fuel and supplies up to the top. This wasn't just a tower. It was a fortress and a small vertical city. Above this square base rose the second tier, which was octagonal or eight. This middle section was even taller, perhaps around 130 feet. It continued the graceful tapering of the structure, guiding the eye upwards. Finally, at the very top was the third circular tier. This is where the magic happened. Inside this cylindrical chamber, a massive fire was kept burning day and night. The fuel, likely wood or other combustible materials, had to be constantly hauled up the tower's internal ramps, a truly Herculean task. But how did they turn a simple bonfire into a beacon visible from up to 35 miles away? This is where the real genius of Sostratus and the Alexandrian engineers comes into play. It's widely believed that behind the fire, a giant concave mirror, forged from highly polished bronze or even glass, was used to reflect the light. This mirror would have focused the flames into a powerful, concentrated beam, projecting it far out to sea. During the day, this same mirror could be used to reflect sunlight, creating a bright flash that was just as effective. In essence, they had created an ancient searchlight. Some tales even claim the mirror was so powerful it could be used to burn enemy ships from a distance. Though that's likely a bit of an exaggeration, a legend born from the sheer awe the structure inspired. For over a millennium, the Lighthouse of Pharos served its purpose. Imagine being a merchant who's been at sea for weeks, battered by storms, your food supplies dwindling. You're approaching the coast of Egypt, nervous about the hidden reefs, And then you see it. First, a faint glimmer on the horizon, then a steady, pulsing light. It's the Pharaohs. The relief, the joy, the certainty that you've made it, that you're safe, must have been overwhelming. It wasn't just a guide. It was a welcome home. The lighthouse became an icon. Its fame spread throughout the known world. The word Pharos itself became the root for the word lighthouse in many languages like French fer, Italian, and Spanish faro, and Portuguese faro. It was more than just a building. It was an idea, a symbol of guidance and enlightenment, a fitting partner to the city's other great institution, the library. One guided ships of trade, the other guided mines of knowledge. But like all things made by human hands, the Pharos was not eternal. Its long, slow decline was caused by the one force that even the greatest engineers of the ancient world could unfully conquer. Nature. The Mediterranean region is seismically active, and over the centuries, a series of powerful earthquakes took their toll on the colossal structure. The first major blow likely came in the year 956, when an earthquake damaged the top section and caused the Great Mirror to fall. The light, though perhaps not as powerful, was kept burning. Another quake in 1303 caused severe structural damage, and a final, devastating one in 1323 left the magnificent wonder in ruins. For a while, the crumbling base remained, a sad shadow of its former glory. Travelers in the 14th century described it as a heap of stones, barely recognizable. The final chapter for the Pharaohs came in 1480. The then Sultan of Egypt, Keba, decided to fortify Alexandria's harbor against potential invaders. He used the fallen stones and the remaining foundation of the once great lighthouse to build a defensive fort in its place. The citadel of Kebe still stands on that spot today, a beautiful and historic structure in its own right, built literally from the bones of a wonder of the world. The flame that had guided sailors for over 1,500 years was finally and forever extinguished. But is the story truly over? Not quite. In 1994, a team of underwater archaeologists, led by Genevieve Impure, began exploring the seafloor in Alexandria's eastern harbor, right next to the citadel of Cape, and what they found was breathtaking. Thousands of massive stone blocks, columns, and even colossal statues, including some thought to be of Ptolemy II and his queen, were lying on the seabed. They had been toppled into the harbor by the same earthquakes that destroyed the lighthouse. These were the very stones of the pharaoh. Today, these underwater ruins are a protected site, a submerged museum. There are plans and dreams of one day raising some of these artifacts, or even creating an underwater museum for divers to visit, allowing us to come face to face with the remains of this ancient marvel. The Lighthouse of Pharos may be gone, but its legacy shines on. It represents a pinnacle of ancient engineering and a profound human desire to conquer the darkness, to provide safety, and to connect with one another across vast distances. It was a flame of hope that burned for 1,500 years, a light in the mist that guided countless souls home. And even today, as we piece together its story from scattered texts and submerged stones, the light of the Pharos continues to illuminate our understanding of the ancient world. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a world without supermarkets, without farms stretching to the horizon, without even a neat little vegetable patch in a backyard. This was our world for hundreds of thousands of years. A world of wandering, of following the herds, of knowing the land not as something to be owned, but as a vast untamed provider. But then, something incredible happened. A quiet revolution that would forever change the human story. This is the story of the first garden. For millennia, our ancestors were expert foragers. They knew the secret language of the seasons, the exact moment a berry was ripe, where the tastiest roots hid, and which leaves could soothe a fever. The entire world was their garden, and they moved through it with a deep, intuitive understanding. They were participants in nature's grand rhythm, not its conductors. They watched seeds fall and sprout. They saw how plants thrived in certain soils, and how water brought life. This was knowledge gathered over countless generations, a library of observation stored not in books, but in memory and tradition. The end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago, brought a dramatic shift. As the great sheets of ice retreated, the climate stabilized, becoming warmer and wetter. New landscapes emerged, and with them, new opportunities. In a region we now call the Fertile Crescent, a green arc of land curving from the Nile to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, wild grasses grew in abundance. These weren't just any grasses. They were the wild ancestors of wheat and barley. For hunter-gatherers, these dense stands of grain were a jackpot, a reliable and calorie-rich food source. At first, people would simply come to these areas to harvest the wild bounty. They would gather what they needed and move on. But a brilliant idea began to take root, perhaps as slowly and surely as the seeds themselves. What if they didn't have to wander so far? What if they could encourage these useful plants to grow closer to home, somewhere convenient and safe? This wasn't a single person's eureka moment. It was a gradual process, a slow dance of observation and experimentation. Imagine a small group setting up a temporary camp near a stream. A woman, perhaps, spills a handful of wild grain she was carrying. Weeks later, she returns to the same spot and sees a patch of familiar green shoots pushing through the soil. A connection is made. She sees that the seeds she dropped have grown. It's a simple observation, but it holds the power to reshape civilization. Maybe next time, she scatters the seeds on purpose, clearing away a few competing weeds. Maybe she notices that the plants grow better in the soft, damp soil near the water's edge. This was the birth of cultivation. It wasn't about dominating nature. It was a partnership. Early farmers learned to work with the land. They selected the best seeds to save for the next planting. The ones from plants with the biggest grains. The ones that didn't shatter and fall to the ground before they could be harvested. Unknowingly, they were practicing the art of artificial selection, gently guiding the evolution of these plants to better suit human needs over generations. While the incorn wheat, with its brittle stems and small grains, was transformed into the domesticated wheat we know today, with its robust stalks and plump, generous kernels. The first gardens were likely small, messy, and chaotic by our standards. They were probably mixed plots with grains, lentils, peas, and gourds all growing together, nestled in clearings near a settlement. Tending them was hard work. People used simple tools, digging sticks to break up the soil, stone sickles to harvest the grain. They weren't just planting seeds, they were planting roots. For the first time in human history, a significant number of people could stay in one place. This shift from a nomadic life to a settled one was profound. It led to the creation of the first villages. Places like Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, sprang up. Here, people built permanent homes from mud brick, constructed walls for defense, and developed new social structures. Living together in larger groups required cooperation, planning, and rules. The surplus food they grew needed to be stored, protected, and distributed. The first garden wasn't just about food, it was about security. It created a buffer against the uncertainties of hunting and gathering. While a bad hunt could mean hunger for a day, a successful harvest could mean food for a year. This reliability allowed populations to grow. It freed up time and people for other pursuits. With a stable food supply, not everyone had to be involved in finding food every single day. This is where we see the explosion of human innovation. People began to specialize. Some became better farmers, others became skilled potters, creating vessels to store grain and water. Weavers created textiles from flax, another early domesticated plant. Tool makers refined their craft, and with a settled community came the need for leadership and organization. The seeds of government and religion were sown alongside the wheat and barley. This new way of life also changed our relationship with the earth. The concept of land ownership began to emerge. A family or a community had a vested interest in the particular plot of ground they tended. It was their source of life. They developed a deeper, more intimate connection to a single place. The seasons took on a new, more urgent meaning. The spring planting, the summer tending, the autumn harvest. These became the central events of the year, often marked by rituals and celebrations that honored the earth and the celestial bodies that governed the seasons. Of course, this transition wasn't a perfect utopia. Farming was backbreaking labor. Dependence on a few staple crops made early agricultural societies vulnerable. A drought, a flood, or a pest infestation could lead to famine. Diets, in some cases, became less varied than those of their forager ancestors, leading to new health challenges. Living in close quarters with other people and domestic animals also created new pathways for diseases to spread. But the momentum was unstoppable. The first garden was an idea that spread across the globe. Independently, in different parts of the world, people were having the same revolutionary thought. In China, communities along the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers began cultivating rice and millet. In the Americas, people in what is now Mexico started to domesticate corn, beans, and squash. In the highlands of New Guinea, it was taro and bananas. Each culture developed its own unique agricultural package, its own first garden, perfectly suited to its environment. This ancient story is still with us. Every time you eat a piece of bread, a bowl of rice, or a corn tortilla, you are tasting the legacy of those first gardeners. You are participating in a conversation with ancestors who, thousands of years ago, first looked at a wild seed and saw not just a meal for today, but the promise of a future. They learned to tend the earth with care, to nurture life from a single seed, and in doing so, they planted the world we live in today. It all started there, in that quiet revolutionary act of planting the first garden. In a world buzzing with noise and constant motion, have you ever felt a longing for a place of absolute serenity? A place where time seems to stand still. Today, we're journeying to such a location. A hidden gem nestled high in the mountains, known only to a few as the Temple of the Wind. This isn't just a story about ancient ruins. It's an exploration into a realm where the spiritual and the natural world dance in perfect harmony. So, grab a warm drink, settle in, and let's embark on this adventure together. Imagine hiking through dense, misty forests, the air growing cooler and thinner with every step. The path is barely visible, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Then, as you break through the tree line, you see it. Perched on a dramatic cliffside, bathed in the soft, golden light of the setting sun, stands the Temple of the Wind. It's not a grand, imposing structure like you might picture. Instead, it's an elegant, open-air marvel crafted from pale, weathered stone that seems to glow from within. Arches and pillars are carved with intricate patterns, resembling swirling air currents and delicate wind chimes, made from polished stones and rare metals hang from every available surface, their gentle music the only sound besides the whisper of the wind itself. This temple wasn't built for gods of stone or gold. It was built to honor the unseen, the intangible, the very breath of the world. For generations, ancient keepers have maintained this sacred space. They believe that the wind is a carrier of stories, a messenger of spirits, and a conduit for cosmic energy. The temple is designed as a giant musical instrument, built to capture and amplify the voice of the wind, turning its wild howls and gentle sighs into a celestial symphony. The architecture is a marvel of ancient acoustics. Every curve of the walls, every opening in the roof, is precisely calculated to interact with the wind in a specific way. As twilight descends, the magic truly begins. This is the hour of the calling, a ritual that has been practiced here for millennia. The last rays of sunlight paint the sky in shades of deep purple, orange, and pink, and a profound silence falls over the landscape. The temple keepers, dressed in simple flowing robes, the color of the evening sky, gather in the central chamber. They don't speak. Instead, they begin to hum a low, resonant sound that seems to vibrate from the very stones beneath their feet. This isn't a performance, it's a communion. The humming slowly builds, layering into a complex harmony that weaves through the pillars and arches. It's a song without words, a melody that speaks directly to the soul. As their voices rise, the wind seems to respond. It gusts through the temple's openings, playing the structure like a flute. The wind chimes join in, their random, delicate notes creating a shimmering counterpoint to the deep human drone. It feels as if the spirits of the air are being summoned, drawn in by this ancient, heartfelt invitation. You can almost feel their presence's subtle shift in the air, a coolness on your skin, a sense of being watched by something vast and benevolent. The ritual is about listening, not just singing. The keepers believe that within the wind's song, one can hear prophecies, gain wisdom, and connect with the spirits of ancestors who have passed into the great expanse. They listen for patterns in the whistling gusts, for messages in the chime's melody. It's a form of deep meditation, a surrendering of the self to the flow of the natural world. In this space, you realize how disconnected we often are from the elements we depend on. We shield ourselves from the wind, complain about the rain, and hide from the sun. But here, the wind is revered as a sacred, life-giving force. One of the most fascinating aspects of the temple is its collection of wind stones. These are smooth, palm-sized river stones, each etched with a unique spiral symbol. When a person feels a deep connection or receives a moment of clarity during the ritual, they select a stone. They then hold it up to a specific aperture in the temple wall, a wind window, and whisper their hopes, their fears, or their gratitude into it. The wind then carries their words away, releasing them into the world. It's a beautiful act of letting go, of trusting the universe to hear you. Over centuries, thousands of these stones have been placed in niches around the temple, each one a silent testament to a moment of profound human connection with the unseen. The keepers of the temple live a simple life, dedicated to preserving this tradition. They are not monks in the traditional sense, but rather students of the wind. They learn to read the weather not from instruments, but from the sound the wind makes as it travels down the mountain valleys. They can tell a storm is coming by a change in the pitch of the wind chimes, or predict a clear day by the gentle murmur of the air through the stone corridors. Their knowledge is passed down orally, through songs and stories shared in the quiet hours after the twilight ritual. Their living libraries an ancient, elemental wisdom. Visiting the Temple of the Wind is a transformative experience. It's not about witnessing a spectacle. It's about participating in a moment of pure, unadulterated peace. It reminds you that there is magic in the world, hidden in the places we often overlook. It teaches you to listen more closely to the world around you, and to the quiet whispers of your own heart. In the profound quiet of the temple, with the wind singing its ancient song, you begin to understand that we are not separate from nature, but an intrinsic part of its grand, beautiful, and mysterious symphony. It's a humbling realization, and one that stays with you long after you've descended from the mountain. As the last light fades and the first stars appear in the ink-black sky, the ritual draws to a close. The humming subsides, the wind softens to a gentle breeze, and the chimes fall silent, one by one. A deep, resonant peace settles over the temple. The keepers give a silent nod of thanks to the spirits, to the wind, and to each other. The communion is over, but its effects linger in the air. A palpable energy of tranquility and connection. This place isn't on any map, and you won't find it in any travel guide. It exists in the realm of stories, in the hearts of those who seek a deeper connection with the world. But knowing that such a place exists, even in legend, is a beautiful thing. It's a reminder that there's more to this world than meets the eye, if only we take the time to listen to the wind. Imagine this. Deep within the earth, far from the sunlit world we know, a single flame flickers. It casts long dancing shadows on ancient stone walls. In the heart of this darkness, a hand moves with purpose. This is the hand of an artist, one of the first our world has ever known. They are alone, surrounded by silence, broken only by the crackle of their torch and the gentle scrape of pigment on rock. What drives a person to venture into the cold, dangerous depths of a cave? Not for shelter, not for safety, but to create. This isn't just about survival. This is the dawn of human expression. The very moment our ancestors decided that life was not just for living, but for capturing, for remembering, for sharing. They were painting their world into existence. These weren't just random scribbles. Look closely at the art from caves like Lascaux in France or Altamira in Spain. You see herds of bison, their muscles powerfully rendered. You see graceful deer seemingly leaping across the stone. You see the outlines of hands reaching out from the past, saying, "I was here. I saw this. I felt this." These artists were masters of their craft. They ground minerals like ochre and manganese into powders, mixing them with charcoal, animal fat, or spit to create a palette of reds, yellows, blacks, and browns. They used their fingers, primitive brushes made of twigs or animal hair, and even hollow reeds to spray paint onto the walls, creating stunning three-dimensional effects by using the natural bulges and curves of the cave. It was a sophisticated operation, a true artistic endeavor. Think about the journey. To reach these canvases, our ancestors had to crawl through impossibly tight passages, navigate treacherous drops, and carry everything they needed with them: their tools, their pigments, and most importantly, their light. They used stone lamps filled with animal fat and a wick, or simple torches. In that flickering, unstable light, the animals they painted would have seemed to move, to breathe, to come alive on the cave walls. It must have been a magical, almost mystical experience. Were these paintings part of a ritual to ensure a successful hunt? Were they stories passed down through generations? Or were they simply art for art? Second, individual's profound need to capture the beauty and power of the world around them. We may never know for sure, and that's part of the enduring mystery. These weren't just pictures of animals, they were a window into the minds of our distant relatives. The world they lived in was raw and unforgiving. They were surrounded by immense, powerful beasts. Mammoths, cave lions, woolly rhinos. Yet, in their art, there is not just fear, but a deep sense of reverence and connection. They understood the rhythms of nature, the spirit of the herds they depended on. By painting these animals, they were perhaps trying to understand them, to connect with their spirit, to honor their place in the world. It's a profound display of empathy and awareness, showing that even tens of thousands of years ago, humans were grappling with the same big questions we are today. What is our place in the universe? What does it mean to be alive? One of the most haunting images found in these caves is the hand stencil. The artists would place their hand against the wall and blow pigment around it, leaving a negative impression. It's an incredibly personal signature. It feels like a direct message sent across time. It's not a depiction of something else. It is the artists themselves, present and accounted for. Each handprint is a unique individual, a person with hopes, fears, and a creative spark. When you see those hands today, you can't help but feel a powerful connection. You can almost feel the cold stone and the warmth of the human hand that rested there 40,000 years ago. It collapses time, reminding us that these weren't primitive brutes, but people just like us. Why go so deep? Why paint in the most inaccessible, hidden parts of the cave? Some scholars believe these deep caves were seen as sacred spaces, a womb of the earth, a gateway to the spirit world. The journey into the darkness was a pilgrimage. The act of painting was a ritual, a ceremony. The images weren't meant for a public gallery. They were for the spirits, for the gods, or for a select few initiates. The darkness, the silence, the flickering light, it all would have enhanced the spiritual power of the experience. It was a cathedral built by nature, decorated by human hands, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds could meet. The art wasn't just on the wall. It was part of a living, breathing, sacred performance. Let's also appreciate the sheer dedication. This wasn't a casual hobby. It required planning, resourcefulness, and immense courage. They had to gather the materials, prepare the pigments, and then embark on a dangerous journey into the unknown. And for what? For a legacy they could never have imagined. They had no idea that their work would survive for tens of thousands of years, to be discovered by a future civilization they couldn't even conceive of. They were driven by an internal fire, a creative impulse so strong that it pushed them into the literal and metaphorical darkness they were creating for their present. But they gifted us the greatest inheritance imaginable, the first chapter of our own human story. The discovery of these caves in modern times was like finding a time capsule. When 4 teenagers stumbled upon the Lascaux cave in 1940, they opened a door to a lost world. The art was so vibrant, so sophisticated. It challenged everything people thought they knew about prehistoric humans. Pablo Picasso himself, after visiting Lascaux, famously said, "We have invented nothing." He recognized the pure, uninhibited genius of these first artists. Their ability to convey movement, form, and spirit with such simple tools and under such difficult conditions is a testament to the timeless nature of human creativity. It proves that the desire to make our mark, to tell our story through art, is one of the most fundamental things about being human. Today, these caves are fragile treasures. The breath of too many visitors, the change in humidity, even the light we use to see them can cause damage to the ancient pigments. Many, like Lascaux, are now closed to the public to preserve them, but their legacy is more accessible than ever through incredible replicas and digital documentation. We can still witness their power, and their message is more relevant than ever in our loud, fuss-paced, digital world. The story of the solitary painter in the cave reminds us of the power of quiet contemplation, of focused creation, and of our deep instinctual connection to the natural world. So, the next time you see a painting, or a sculpture, or any piece of art, take a moment to think of that distant ancestor. Think of them in the deep, silent dark, with a flickering torch, carefully, lovingly, bringing a vision to life on a cold stone wall. They left us more than just beautiful pictures. They left us proof that the creative spirit is one of the most ancient and enduring forces in the universe. It's a light that even the deepest darkness cannot extinguish. They were the first to answer the call to create, and we've been following in their footsteps ever since. Have you ever stood in the heart of a city and felt like you've traveled back in time? Not just by looking at the buildings, but by listening to them. Welcome to the City of Bells, a place where time isn't just seen, it's heard. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a special kind of magic awakens. It starts with a single, clear note, a soft chime from a distant tower. Then another joins in, slightly deeper, from a different direction. Soon, a symphony of bells fills the air, echoing off ancient stone walls and cascading down narrow cobblestone streets. This isn't just noise, it's the city's heartbeat. Each bell has its own voice, its own story, forged centuries ago in fire and metal. Imagine, these are the very same sounds that merchants, knights, and artisans heard as they went about their daily lives. The bells told them when to wake, when to pray, when to celebrate, and when to close their market stalls for the day. Walking these streets at dusk, you become part of that timeless tradition. The air grows cooler. The warm glow of lanterns begins to flicker to life in shop windows. The world seems to slow down, all orchestrated by the gentle, overlapping rings of the towers. Let's take a walk together. Look at these cobblestones beneath our feet, worn smooth by countless footsteps over hundreds of years. Each one could tell a story. Now, listen. Can you distinguish the different bells? There's the deep, resonant toll of the cathedral bell, the city's grand old patriarch. It rings with a slow, deliberate pace, a sound that feels steady and reassuring. Then you hear the lighter, quicker chimes from the smaller parish churches, like a lively conversation happening across the rooftops. Each one marks the passing of another quarter hour, weaving a complex, beautiful tapestry of sound. It's a concert played by the city itself, for anyone who's willing to stop and listen. As dusk deepens into twilight, the character of the sound changes. The hustle and bustle of the day fades away. The clatter of horse-drawn carts is replaced by the murmur of quiet conversations from cafes and the soft laughter of people strolling home. The bells seem to ring more softly now, more intimately. They are no longer just marking time. They are singing a lullaby to the city. It's a sound that seeps into the very stones of the buildings, a reminder of the city's enduring spirit and its long, rich history. You can feel the vibrations in the air, a gentle hum that connects you to every generation that has ever called this place home. Let's climb one of the towers. As we ascend the winding stone staircase, the sounds of the street below grow fainter, replaced by the wind whistling through ancient arrow slits. The air gets cooler, and you can smell the age of the stone, a scent of damp earth, and centuries of history. Reaching the top, you step out onto the belfry platform. The view is breathtaking. The entire city is spread out before you, a patchwork of terracotta roofs and glowing windows, all bathed in the soft, fading light. And up here, you're at the very heart of the sound. You're standing right next to the bells themselves. These massive bronze giants, silent for now, are covered in intricate carvings and Latin inscriptions. You can almost feel the potential energy stored within them, waiting for the right moment. And then it happens. The mechanism whirs to life. The great hammer draws back, and with a powerful, sonorous strike, the bell beside you explodes with sound. It's not just something you hear. It's a physical force that you feel in your chest, a vibration that resonates through your entire body. From this vantage point, you can see the other towers answering the call, their own bells swinging and singing out across the twilight landscape. From up here, you can appreciate the true scale of this nightly symphony. It's a conversation between giants. You can trace the sound as it travels across the city, bouncing off the river and winding through the maze-like streets. You see lights flickering in homes as families gather for their evening meals, all under the watchful, musical gaze of these timeless sentinels. This experience, standing in a medieval belfry as the city sings its evening song, is incredibly profound. It connects you to the past in a way that no museum or history book ever could. It's a living, breathing tradition. As we descend back down to street level, the bells continue their gentle chorus. The sky is now a deep indigo, studded with the first stars. The symphony is starting to wind down, with fewer and fewer bells joining the refrain. The final notes hang in the air, shimmering for a moment before fading into the quiet of the night. The city is now at peace. The cobblestone streets, once filled with the echoes of the day, are now hushed and still. But the memory of the sound lingers. This is the magic of the City of Bells. It's a place where history isn't just something you look at. It's something you experience with all your senses. It's the feeling of cool stone under your fingertips, the sight of lantern light on wet cobblestones, and most importantly, the sound of ancient bells calling to each other across the rooftops as night falls. It's a reminder that some things, beautiful and simple, can endure for centuries, connecting us all to the long, unbroken chain of human experience. It's a city that doesn't just tell time, it sings. Imagined being adrift in the middle of the largest ocean on Earth, with nothing but a wooden canoe between you and the deep blue sea. There's no land in sight, no compass, no GPS. Your only guide is the vast, star-dusted canvas above you. This wasn't a survival scenario. This was the reality for the greatest explorers in human history. The Polynesian navigators. For thousands of years, these masters of the seas sailed across the Pacific, settling thousands of islands from Hawaii to Easter Island to New Zealand, forming the vast Polynesian Triangle. How did they achieve these incredible feats of navigation? Long before Europeans dared to venture out of sight of land, the secret was written in the stars. Tonight, we're going on a journey, not just across the water, but back in time, to understand the celestial genius of these. Forget everything you know about modern navigation. We need to learn to see the world through their eyes. The ocean wasn't an empty void. It was a living map, full of signs and pathways. The sky wasn't just a collection of twinkling lights. It was a reliable, ever-present compass. The foundation of Polynesian navigation was a deep, intimate knowledge of the stars. But it wasn't about memorizing complex charts like we do today. It was about relationships. They knew the stars like they knew their own family. They understood where each star and constellation would rise on the eastern horizon and where it would set in the west. This path across the sky gave them a precise directional bearing. To keep a canoe on a straight course, a navigator would align the bow with a rising star. As that star climbed too high in the sky to be a reliable guide, they would switch to another star rising from the same point on the horizon. This technique, a succession of stellar guides, allowed them to maintain a consistent heading throughout the night. One of the most important tools was the star compass. This wasn't a physical object but a mental construct. An expert navigator at the Ura or Poe memorized a circle of 32 points on the horizon, each one marked by the rising or setting position of a specific star. This mental compass was ingrained in their minds from childhood. They could sit in the belly of the canoe, feeling the rhythm of the waves, and visualize this entire celestial map, knowing exactly where they were and where they were going. Think of it like a 360-degree mental GPS, powered by starlight. But what happens when the sky is cloudy? This is where their genius truly shines. Navigation wasn't a single-skilled job. It was a holistic science that involved every single one of their senses. The navigators were masters of reading the ocean itself. They could feel the direction of ocean swells, the long, rolling waves that travel for thousands of miles across the open ocean. These swells are remarkably consistent. When a primary swell from a known direction hits the side of the canoe, it creates a unique, rocking motion. A skilled navigator could lie down in the hull and feel this motion, even in complete darkness or under a cloudy sky, to keep the vessel on course. They could even detect when a swell pattern was disturbed, a subtle sign that it had refracted around a distant, unseen island. The sky held more clues than just stars. The sun was their primary guide during the day. They observed its arc, its position at sunrise and sunset, and the length of its shadows to determine their east-west direction. The moon, with its predictable phases and path, also served as a reliable celestial marker. Even the planets, which they called the wandering stars, were incorporated into their mental maps. They knew the patterns of Venus, Jupiter, and others, using them as supplemental guides on their long voyages. Then there were the living signposts. The flight patterns of certain birds were crucial indicators of land. A frigate bird or a tern, for instance, flies out to sea in the morning to fish and returns to land in the evening. Spotting a flock of these birds heading in a determined direction at dusk was a sure sign that land was near, and in that specific direction. They could even tell how far they were from land by the species of the bird. Some birds stay within a 20-mile radius of their island, while others might venture over 100 miles out. The navigators also read the clouds. Small, stationary clouds on the horizon, on an otherwise clear day, often signaled the presence of an island. As land masses heat up and cause moisture to rise and condense, the color of the water could change, and even the reflections on the underside of clouds could betray the light green of a shallow lagoon, hinting at a nearby act. They could smell the land. The scent of wet foliage and flowers carried on the wind long before the island itself was visible. They tasted the salinity of the water. Every sense was a tool in their navigational toolkit. This knowledge was not learned from books. It was a sacred tradition, passed down through generations from master to apprentice, often within the same family. A young navigator would spend years, sometimes decades, under the tutelage of an elder. They would learn the star paths, the chants that held the navigational information, and the stories of the great voyages of their ancestors. These weren't just stories, they were oral maps, with each verse describing a stretch of the journey, the stars to follow, the currents to expect, and the islands along the way, the canoe itself. The Vaka or Wa, was more than a vessel. It was a living part of their culture, built with reverence and designed for the open ocean. One of the most fascinating concepts is that of itak. This was a method for estimating your position when you couldn't see any land. The navigator would choose an island off to the side of their course, a reference island that they wouldn't actually visit. As they sailed forward, they would mentally picture this reference island passing by a sequence of their memorized steering stars on the horizon. By tracking its apparent backward movement against the backdrop of stars, they could triangulate their own position along their intended path. It's an incredibly sophisticated mental calculation, a testament to their spatial reasoning and deep astronomical knowledge. In the 1970s, this ancient art was on the verge of extinction. Centuries of colonization had suppressed these traditions, replacing celestial wayfinding with magnetic compasses and charts. But then came a renaissance. A group of passionate individuals in Hawaii and across the Pacific sought to revive this knowledge. They built a traditional double-hulled voyaging canoe, the Haka, Le'a, the Star of Gladness. With the guidance of one of the last master navigators, Mopielagi from the tiny island of Satawal, they set out to prove that their ancestors' methods were real and repeatable. In 1976, Hakele successfully sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti and back, a journey of over 5,000 miles without a single modern instrument on board. Mopialek stood on the deck, reading the stars, the sun, and the swells, just as his ancestors had done for millennia. This voyage was a watershed moment. It sparked a cultural reawakening across Polynesia, inspiring a new generation of navigators to learn the old ways. Today, Hakale, and other traditional canoes continue to sail, not just to rediscover roots, but to carry a message of cultural pride, environmental stewardship, and the incredible power of human ingenuity. The Voyage of the Stars is a story about more than just navigation. It's a story about connection to the cosmos, to the ocean, to nature, and to the generations that came before. It teaches us that the most powerful tools we have are not always the ones we can hold in our hands, but the knowledge we hold in our minds and the wisdom we carry in our hearts. The Polynesian navigator saw the world as a unified whole, where the sea and sky were not separate, but two parts of the same map. Their legacy reminds us that by observing, by listening, and by remembering, we too can find our way. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the internet just disappeared? All our digital libraries, our articles, our videos, everything we've ever known, just gone in a flash. It sounds like a sci-fi nightmare, right? But something very similar actually happened in history. After the fall of the mighty Roman Empire, Europe was plunged into what we call the Dark Ages. Cities crumbled, trade routes vanished, and with them the vast libraries of knowledge that had been the bedrock of civilization. It was a time of immense loss, where the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome philosophized. Science, literature was on the brink of being lost forever, but it wasn't. In a world of chaos and conflict, tiny sparks of light flickered in the most unexpected of places. Monasteries. These were quiet, isolated communities, often perched on windswept hills or nestled in secluded valleys, and inside them lived the unlikely heroes of our story, the monks, while the world outside was consumed by survival. These men dedicated their lives to a task that seemed almost pointless at the time: copying books. Let's step back and picture this. There were no printing presses, no photocopiers, no Control-C, Control-V. Every single book had to be copied by hand, letter by painstaking letter. The place where this magic happened was called the scriptorium. Imagine a quiet room, maybe a little chilly, filled with rows of wooden desks. The only sounds are the gentle scratching of a quill on parchment, the soft turning of a page, and perhaps the distant chime of a monastery bell. The monks who worked here were called scribes. This wasn't a job for just anyone. It required incredible patience, a steady hand, and years of training. First, they had to prepare their materials. Parchment was made from animal skin, usually sheep or calf, which had to be scraped, stretched, and smoothed until it was ready to hold ink. The ink itself was often made from things like soot, oak, galls, or crushed minerals, mixed with a binder like gum, Arabic, and their pens. They were typically goose feathers, carefully cut and sharpened to a fine point. With their tools ready, the scribe would sit for hours on end, hunched over a manuscript. Their job was to create an exact replica of an existing book. This meant copying not just the words, but often the intricate illustrations and decorations that adorned the pages. These weren't just simple doodles. They were elaborate works of art, known as illuminations. Think of vibrant, colorful initials kicking off a chapter, or detailed miniature paintings depicting biblical scenes or nature, often decorated with real gold leaf that would catch the light and make the page literally glow or illuminate. This process was incredibly slow and physically demanding. A single scribe might spend months or even years completing just one book. They worked in silence, often for 6 or 7 hours a day. It was grueling on the eyes, the back, and the hands. Medieval records are filled with notes from tired scribes, scribbled in the margins of their manuscripts. One famous note reads, "The work is finished. May the scribe be given a good drink." Another one says, "As the sailor longs for port, so the scribe longs for the final line." It's a human touch that reminds us these weren't faceless drones. They were real people doing incredibly difficult work. So, what were they copying? It wasn't just the Bible, although that was certainly a major focus. They preserved a staggering range of texts. They copied the philosophical works of Plato and Aristotle, The epic poems of Homer and Virgil, the histories of Herodotus, and the scientific and medical texts of scholars like Galen. Without these monks, the foundational ideas of Western civilization, the very thoughts that would later fuel the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, could have easily vanished. They were building a bridge of knowledge, connecting the ancient world to the future. One of the most famous examples comes from Ireland. While mainland Europe was in turmoil, Irish monasteries became crucial centers of learning. Monks like Saint Columba founded monasteries, such as the famous one on the island of Iona, that became beacons of scholarship. They not only preserved classical and Christian texts, but also developed their own unique and beautiful style of art and calligraphy, which you can see in masterpieces like the Book of Kells. These Irish monks then traveled back to mainland Europe as missionaries, refounding monasteries and reintroducing the very texts that had been lost. They were like a cultural rescue mission. But why did they do it? What motivated them to spend their entire lives in this quiet, repetitive labor? For them, it was an act of worship. The Latin phrase they lived by was ora et labora, which means pray and work. Copying sacred texts was a form of prayer, a way to honor God through diligent work. They believed that by preserving these words, they were preserving divine truth and human wisdom for future generations. They saw it as their sacred duty to keep the flame of knowledge alive, even when the world around them seemed determined to extinguish it. Their work wasn't without peril. Monasteries were often targets for raids. Viking invaders, for example, would plunder them for their treasures, and books, often bound with precious metals and jewels, were valuable loot. Many precious manuscripts were burned or destroyed in these attacks. The monks who protected them were sometimes killed, defending their libraries. This makes their dedication even more profound. They weren't just scribes, they were guardians, willing to risk everything for the sake of knowledge. Think about the sheer impact of their work. Without them, the Renaissance might never have happened. The rediscovery of classical texts in the 14th and 15th centuries, which sparked a revolution in art, science, and politics, was only possible because those texts existed to be rediscovered. They had been sitting on monastery shelves, patiently waiting for centuries, copied and recopied by generations of anonymous monks. When Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 1440s, the era of the scribe slowly began to fade. Suddenly, books could be produced faster and cheaper than ever before. But the printing press didn't just appear out of a vacuum. It had something to print asterisks because asterisks of the monks. The first book Gutenberg printed was the Bible, a text that had been meticulously preserved by hand for over 1,000 years. The scribes had passed the torch. Today, we live in a world overflowing with information. Knowledge is just a click away. It's so easy to take it for granted. But our modern world of information stands on the shoulders of these quiet, dedicated individuals. They were the original hard drives of civilization. They were the archivists of the ancient world. In their silent scriptoriums, With nothing more than a quill, ink, and a profound sense of purpose, they saved the words. They ensured that the conversation of humanity, stretching back thousands of years, would not be silenced. So the next time you opened a book or search for something online, take a moment to remember the monks. Remember the centuries of quiet labor, the steady hands, and the unwavering belief that words matter, that ideas are worth preserving, and that even in the darkest of times, a single person with a pen can help save the world. Have you ever truly listened to a clock, not just glanced at it for the time, but really listened to that steady rhythmic? It's a sound so common, so woven into the fabric of our lives, that we barely notice it anymore. But in that simple sound, there's a story of human ingenuity, of our endless quest to understand and measure the one thing we can never get back: time. This is the story of the clockmaker's dream. A dream that began not with gears and springs, but with a simple, profound question. How do we capture the invisible river of time? For millennia we looked to the heavens. The sun's majestic arc across the sky gave us the sundial. Its shadow a silent finger tracing the hours. The moon's gentle phases marked the passing of months. The stars themselves were a grand, celestial clockwork, guiding farmers and sailors. We used water drip by drip in clever contraptions called water clocks or clip. We watched sand fall through an hourglass, a poetic symbol of moments slipping away. These methods were beautiful, but they were imperfect. Sundials slept under cloudy skies. Water clocks froze in winter, and what a hassle to refill. They were all continuous, flowing measures of time. But our world, our lives, they're made of moments, seconds, minutes, hours. We needed a way to chop time into equal, bite-sized pieces. We needed a beat, we needed a tick. And so, the dream shifted. The quest became mechanical. The great challenge was to create something that could move in a regular, controlled, and repeatable way. The answer, when it came, was a stroke of genius. It was an invention so crucial it would change the world forever. Imagine a wheel, powered by a weight that wants to spin wildly out of control. The escapement is like a little gatekeeper. It has two arms, called palettes, that rock back and forth. First, one pallet catches a tooth on the wheel, stopping it. Tick. Then, as it swings away, it releases the wheel, which turns just a tiny bit before the other pallet swings in and catches the next tooth. This rhythmic dance, this controlled release of energy, is the very heart of every mechanical clock. It's what creates that iconic sound. Sometime in the late 13th century, in monasteries across Europe, this dream became a reality. Monks, who needed a precise way to schedule their 7 daily prayers, were likely the first to build these new mechanical clocks. They weren't your friendly neighborhood mantelpiece clocks. They were colossal iron monsters, behemoths of gears and levers, housed in the bell towers of cathedrals and town halls. They often had no face, no hands. Their job wasn't to be seen, but to be heard. They struck bells to call the faithful to prayer and the townsfolk to their daily tasks, imposing a new, mechanical rhythm on society. These early clocks, known as turret clocks, were marvels of medieval engineering, but they were also terribly inaccurate. They might lose or gain 15 minutes, even half an hour, in a single day. The craftsmen who built them weren't even called clockmakers yet. They were locksmiths, blacksmiths, artisans of iron, who wrestled the stubborn metal into the intricate shapes of gears and pinions. Each clock was a unique, handmade masterpiece, a testament to the maker's skill and patience. They were figuring it out as they went, learning the secrets of metal and motion. The real revolution. The moment the clock began to shrink from a tower to a tabletop, came with a new way to regulate that tick. For the first few centuries, the escapement was controlled by a simple horizontal bar with weights on it, called a foliot. You could adjust the speed by moving the weights, but it was a clumsy and imprecise system. Then, in the mid-17th century, two of the greatest scientific minds of the age, Galileo Galilei and Christian Huygens, turned their attention to the problem. Galileo famously had observed a swinging chandelier in a cathedral and noticed that each swing, big or small, seemed to take the same amount of time. He realized the pendulum was the key to precise timekeeping. While Galileo conceived of the idea, it was the Dutch scientist Christian Huygens who, in 1656, successfully applied the pendulum to a clock. This was a game changer. The pendulum clock was astoundingly accurate, losing perhaps only a minute a day, and later mere seconds. This incredible leap in precision transformed everything. The clock face, once an afterthought, became essential. The minute hand, previously a rarity, became standard. Suddenly, you could schedule a meeting not just for the afternoon but for 2:15. Time was no longer a vague flow. It was a grid of precise, measurable units. This new accuracy fueled a golden age of clockmaking. In England, France, and Germany, workshops buzzed with activity. Masters like Thomas Tompion and George Graham in London crafted timepieces that were not just instruments, but works of art. They were housed in exquisite wooden cases, their brass and steel movements polished to a mirror finish. Owning a clock became a symbol of wealth, status, and a modern, rational worldview. But the clockmaker's dream wasn't just about making beautiful objects for the rich. It was about solving practical problems. Sailors, for instance, were desperate for an accurate way to tell time at sea. Without it, they couldn't determine their longitude, their east-west position. Thousands of lives and fortunes were lost to shipwrecks. In response, the British government offered a massive prize for a solution. The challenge was immense. A pendulum clock is useless on a rocking ship. The clockmaker's dream needed to evolve again. It fell to a humble, self-taught carpenter and clockmaker from Yorkshire, John Harrison, to achieve the impossible. Over decades of obsessive work, he created a series of timekeepers. his famous sea that could withstand the motion of a ship, and the changes in temperature and humidity. His final version, the H4, was essentially a large, hyper-accurate pocket watch. On its trial voyage in 1761, it lost only Lima seconds over 81 days at sea. Harrison had solved the longitude problem and made the world's oceans safe for navigation. As the clock conquered the sea, it also began to conquer the pocket. The next frontier was How do you take the intricate mechanism of a pendulum clock and make it small enough to carry? The solution was the mainspring, a tightly coiled ribbon of steel that stored energy, and a balanced wheel, a tiny weighted wheel that oscillated back and forth, acting like a miniature pendulum digitalis. This innovation, born in the 15th century, was perfected over the next 200 years. By the 18th century, the pocket watch was the ultimate personal accessory, a fusion of science and fashion. They were crafted from gold and silver, adorned with enamel and jewels. Flipping open a pocket watch to check the time was a gesture of elegance and sophistication. The Industrial Revolution harnessed the clockmaker's dream and put it to work. Factories on schedules. Trains, for the first time, needed to run on a standardized timetable to avoid collisions. In 1883, the railroads of North America unilaterally adopted a system of standard time zones, and society, in order to catch the train, had to follow suit. The clock, once a luxury, was now a necessity. Mass production made clocks and watches affordable for everyone. The alarm clock decisions us in the morning. The factory whistle told us when to work, and the mantel clock gathered the family in the evening. The 20th century saw the dream evolve yet again. The mechanical tick-tock, which had reigned for 600 years, was challenged by a new kind of vibration. Scientists discovered that a quartz crystal, when an electric voltage is applied, vibrates at an incredibly precise and stable frequency many thousands of times per second. In the 1920s, the first quartz clock was built. By the 1970s, they had been miniaturized, and the cheap, ultra-accurate quartz watch material the market, nearly wiping out the traditional mechanical watch industry. And today, the clockmaker's dream lives inside our phones, our computers, our GPS satellites. It's synchronized by atomic clocks, a pinnacle of precision that uses the vibration of atoms themselves to measure time. These clocks are so accurate they would lose or gain only a single second over hundreds of millions of years. From the clunky iron monsters in medieval towers to the invisible atomic hum that powers our digital world, the quest for perfect time has never stopped. But even now, in our world of digital displays and atomic precision, there is a renewed fascination, a deep affection for the old ways, for the intricate ballet of gears and springs, for the skill of a human hand assembling hundreds of tiny parts into a living, breathing machine. The mechanical watch is a small miracle on the wrist, a reminder that for centuries the greatest minds and the most skilled hands poured their passion into this one singular dream: to capture time. So the next time you hear that steady tick-tock, take a moment. Listen. It's more than just a sound. It's the echo of a 700-year-old dream. It's the heartbeat of human ingenuity. Thank you for watching. In the heart of ancient Japan, where mountains pierce the clouds and cherry blossoms drift on the wind, lived a warrior class bound by a code as sharp as their blades. This was the world of the samurai. Their story isn't just one of epic battles and gleaming steel, but a profound tale of honor, discipline, and a deep connection to the fleeting beauty of life. Imagine a lone samurai standing beneath a blossoming sakura tree. The air is still, save for the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft descent of pink petals. Each petal a whisper of mortality. A reminder that life, like the cherry blossom, is beautiful but brief. This concept, known as mano no awe, the pathos of things, was at the core of the samurai spirit. It wasn't a morbid fascination with death, but a profound appreciation for the present moment. To live each day with purpose, to face every challenge with courage, was to honor the very essence of existence, the way of the warrior. Bushido was their guiding star. It wasn't a written law, but an unwritten code passed down through generations, shaping every aspect of a samurai's life. It emphasized 7 key virtues: righteousness, courage, compassion, respect, integrity, honor, and loyalty. To a samurai, honor was more valuable than life itself. A broken promise, a cowardly act, or a betrayal of one his lord brought a stain so deep it could only be cleansed by the ultimate sacrifice. This unwavering loyalty to their daimyo or feudal lord was absolute. The bond between a lord and his samurai was sacred. A samurai would lay down his life without a second thought to protect his master, his clan, and his lands. This wasn't blind obedience. It was a pact of mutual trust and respect. The Lord provided for his warriors, and in return they offered him their unwavering strength and skill. We see this in countless stories, like that of the 47 Ronin, who avenged their fallen master, knowing full well it would lead to their own demise. Their loyalty became a legend, a testament to the powerful bonds that held their society together. But the life of a samurai wasn't all conflict and steel. To balance the warrior's path, they cultivated tea. Many were skilled poets, calligraphers, and practitioners of the tea ceremony. This pursuit of refinement and tranquility, known as bunbu, ryodo, the dual way of the pen and the sword, was essential. It tempered their martial spirit with sensitivity and introspection. A samurai might compose a haiku about the moon before heading into battle, finding a moment of peace and clarity amidst the chaos. The intricate, meditative steps of the tea ceremony taught patience and mindfulness, skills just as valuable on the battlefield as a sharp. The katana itself was more than just a weapon. It was considered the soul of the samurai, forged with meticulous care folded thousands of times to create a blade of unparalleled strength and sharpness. It was a work of art and a symbol of their status and spirit. A samurai and his sword were inseparable. Learning to wield it was a lifelong journey, a discipline that trained the body, mind, and spirit. Masters of Kenjutsu, the art of the sword, moved with a deadly grace, their movements a blur of precision and power. Each draw, each cut, was an expression of their training and their inner state. As we delve deeper into their world, we find stories that illuminate their complex philosophy. Consider the tale of a master swordsman challenged by an arrogant young warrior. The master, instead of drawing his blade, simply sat, calm and unmoving. The young challenger, enraged by the perceived insult, charged forward. But the master's stillness was his greatest defense. He effortlessly disarmed the youth, not with force, but with a deep understanding of timing and psychology. He taught the young warrior that true strength isn't just about physical power, but about inner peace and control. Or think of the samurai who, after a long life of service, retired to a quiet monk. He traded his armor for a simple robe, his katana for a gardening tool. He found a different kind of fulfillment in nurturing life, in watching a single bamboo shoot grow towards the sky. His warrior spirit hadn't vanished, it had transformed. The discipline he learned in the dojo was now applied to the patient cultivation of his garden. He understood that the principles of Bushido perseverance, mindfulness, respect for life could be found in the simplest of tasks. The fall of the samurai class came with the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century. As Japan opened its doors to the West and the feudal system crumbled, the age of warriors gave way to the age of industry. Swords were outlawed, top knots were cut, and the samurai were forced to find new roles in a rapidly changing world. It seemed as though their song was fading into silence. But did it truly end? The spirit of the samurai, the essence of Bushido, didn't disappear. It seeped into the very fabric of modern Japanese culture. You can see its echoes in the relentless pursuit of perfection in Japanese craftsmanship. From electronics to cuisine, you can feel it in the deep-seated values of respect, discipline, and collective responsibility that permeate society. The martial arts, like kendo, judo, and karate, continue to teach the principles of Bushido to millions around the world, preserving the warrior's focus and respect for one's opponent. The image of the samurai, standing resolute as cherry blossoms fall, endure. It's a powerful symbol of a life lived with purpose, courage, and a poignant awareness of its own fragility. Their story teaches us that true strength is found not in aggression, but in discipline, that honor is a choice we make every day, and that beauty can be found in the most fleeting of moments. The song of the samurai may have changed its tune, but its melody lingers on, a timeless whisper on the winds of history. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, we're not just going for a walk. We're stepping into a dream. We're about to embark on a journey through the Queen's Garden at midnight. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath and let the sounds of your day fade away. Imagine a grand Rotayan gate, its bars cool and smooth. Under the moonlight, it swings open without a sound, inviting us into a world of serene majesty, a world that sleeps under a blanket of stars. As we step inside, the air changes. It's cooler here, carrying the soft, sweet perfume of night bloom and jasmine. The gravel path crunches gently under our feet, a quiet rhythm in the profound silence. Look up. The moon is our only lantern, a silver disk hanging in the velvety dark sky. It bathes everything in a soft, ethereal glow, transforming the familiar shapes of leaves and flowers into something magical and new. The world seems to be holding its breath, and in this stillness, we can finally hear our own. To our left, a row of ancient cypress trees stands tall and proud, like silent sentinels guarding the queen's secret. The dark, pointed silhouettes reach for the stars, a dramatic contrast against the luminous night. The moonlight filters through their dense needles, creating a delicate lacework of shadows on the path before us. There's a feeling of history here, of countless nights just like this one, witnessed by these stoic trees. You can almost feel the whispers of the past carried on the gentle breeze that rustles their branches. Let's follow this winding path deeper into the garden. The air is thick with a chorus of scents. Can you smell it? Beyond the jasmine, there's the rich, earthy smell of damp soil, the faint, clean fragrance of boxwood hedges, and the subtle, spicy aroma of climbing roses that have closed their petals for the night. Each step releases a new layer of perfume, a symphony for the senses composed by nature itself. It's a scent that you can't bottle, one that exists only in this moment, in this place. We've arrived at the heart of the garden, the central fountain. Tonight, it is silent. The water lies perfectly still. In its marble basin, a dark, flawless mirror, reflecting the moon and the stars above. It's as if the entire galaxy has been captured in this small pool of water. Lean over the edge and look at the reflection. You can see the pinpricks of distant constellations, a universe at our feet. In this quiet moment, the scale of everything shifts. The vastness of the cosmos feels intimate, and our own worries feel very, very small. Let's sit for a while on this stone bench, worn smoothed by time and weather. It's still slightly warm from the day's sun. From here, we have a perfect view of the tiered flower bed. Even in the monochrome light of the moon, you can appreciate the structure and design. The pale petals of white roses and lilies seem to glow, gathering every bit of available light. They look like floating spirits in the darkness, their heads bowed in slumber. The deeper colors of delphiniums and lavenders have retreated into shades of deep violet and black, adding depth and mystery to the scene. Listen closely. The silence isn't absolute. Can you hear the gentle rustle of a small creature in the undergrowth? Perhaps a hedgehog on its nightly foraging mission. And there, the soft hoot of a distant owl, a lonely call that echoes through the stillness, reminding us that the garden is alive, even as it sleeps. These are the secret sounds of the night, the whispers of a world that awakens when we are usually asleep. They are sounds of peace, of life continuing its quiet, steady rhythm. We're now walking towards the Rose Arbor, a long tunnel woven from ancient climbing roses. During the day, it's a riot of color and buzzing bees. But at night, it's a different kind of beautiful. As we walk through it, the moonlight struggles to pierce the thick canopy of leaves and thorns, creating a tunnel of near-complete darkness. It feels like a secret passage to another realm. The air inside is intensely fragrant, a concentrated essence of rose and damp earth. It's comforting and enclosing, a safe haven from the outside world. Emerging from the arbor, we find ourselves in a more open space, a manicured lawn that stretches out like a silver carpet. The grass is damp with dew, and each tiny droplet catches the moonlight, making the entire lawn sparkle as if it were dusted with diamonds. It feels almost sacrilegious to walk on it, to disturb such perfect, glittering beauty. Let's stay on the path that borders it, admiring this natural spectacle from a distance. It's a reminder that beauty is often found in the smallest, most transient details. Our walk is nearing its end. We're approaching the gate once more, but let's turn back for one final look. The garden lies before us, a masterpiece of shadow and light, silence and secret sounds. The moonlight has painted everything in shades of silver, gray, and deep indigo. It's a place of profound peace, a sanctuary where time seems to slow down. This midnight garden has offered us a gift, a moment of pure, uninterrupted tranquility. A chance to reconnect with the quiet beauty of the world and with the stillness within ourselves. Carry this feeling with you. Remember the scent of jasmine, the sight of the moon reflected in the water, the feel of the cool night air on your skin. This peaceful place exists, not just in this story, but within your own imagination, ready for you to visit whenever you need a moment of calm. The Queen's Garden at midnight is a state of mind, a sanctuary you can always return to. Have you ever stopped to think about the paper in your hands, the book on your shelf, the note on your desk, the receipt in your wallet? It's so common, so everyday, that we barely notice it. But this simple, unassuming material is one of the most revolutionary inventions in human history. It's a technology that completely reshaped how we remember, communicate, and even dream. This is the story of paper, a journey from a soft rustle to the foundation of our modern world. Before paper writing was a heavy business, literally, ancient civilizations carved their histories into stone, molded them onto clay tablets, or painted them. There, imagine trying to send a letter that weighs as much as a brick. The Sumerians in Mesopotamia used cuneiform on wet clay, which was then baked hard. It was durable. For sure, we still have them thousands of years later, but not exactly portable. The ancient Egyptians came up with a brilliant solution. They took the reeds growing along the Nile, stripped them, layered them, and pressed them into a light, flexible writing surface. This was a gate. Suddenly, knowledge could travel. Scrolls could be carried, stored in libraries like the Great Library of Alexandria, and shared across borders. The Romans and Greeks loved it. But papyrus had its flaws. It was expensive. The manufacturing process was a closely guarded Egyptian secret, and it was fragile, susceptible to moisture and decay. Elsewhere in the world, people were using other materials. In Europe, they used parchment, made from treated animal skins, usually sheep, goat, or calf. Parchment was incredibly durable. You could even scrape off the ink and reuse it, but it was even more expensive than papyrus. Think about it. One large book might require the skins of an entire flock of sheep. In India, they wrote on dried palm leaves, and in ancient China, they used strips of bamboo and pieces of silk. Bamboo was cumbersome and heavy. A single book could fill a cart. Silk was luxurious and light, but far too expensive for everyday use. There was a clear and pressing need for a writing material that was cheap, light, and easy to produce. The world was waiting for an invention that could democratize knowledge, and that invention would come from China. The credit for inventing paper as we know it traditionally goes to a man named Sai Lun, a court official during the Han Dynasty around the year 105 AD. Now, archaeologists have found fragments of earlier forms of paper, so Sai Lun probably didn't invent it from scratch. What he did was perfect the process. He created a recipe and a method that was so efficient and effective, it set the standard for centuries. His genius was in using a mix of readily available cheap materials. He took things like mulberry bark, hemp fibers, old fishing nets, and discarded rags, and mashed them all into a pulp with water. He then spread this soupy mixture thinly over a flat, porous screen, probably made of woven cloth stretched on a frame. The water would drain away, leaving a tangled mat of fibers behind. This mat was then pressed to squeeze out more water and left to dry in the sun. The result, a sheet of paper, light, flexible, and incredibly cheap to make. This was revolutionary. Suddenly, writing was no longer a luxury for the elite. Scholars, officials, and merchants could now afford to record everything. Bureaucracy expanded, literature flourished, and education became more accessible. The Chinese government was able to keep extensive records, manage its vast empire more effectively, and standardize everything from laws to currency. But for a long time, the secret of papermaking was jealously guarded by the Chinese. It was their technological advantage, a source of cultural and political power. For over 500 years, China was the only place in the world that knew how to make paper. So how did the secret finally get out? Through conflict in the 8th century. The expanding temples dynasty clashed with the growing Arab-Abbasid Caliphate in the Battle of Talas in modern-day Kyrgyzstan. The Arabs won the battle and, according to legend, captured a group of Chinese paper makers. These prisoners of war were taken to Samarkand, a major city on the Silk Road, and were forced to set up the first paper mill outside of China. Samarkand became a new center for paper production, and from there, the technology began its slow but steady journey westward. The Arabs, who had a vibrant scientific and literary culture, immediately recognized the value of paper. It was far superior to the papyrus and parchment they had been using. Paper fueled the Islamic Golden Age. Libraries in cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba swelled with books on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. From the Islamic world, papermaking entered Europe through Spain, which was then under Moorish rule. The first paper mill in Europe was established in Zativa, Spain, around the 11th century. But for a while, Europeans were skeptical. They were used to the durability of parchment and saw paper as a flimsy, less prestigious material. It was even banned in some places for official documents. However, the practical advantages of paper were undeniable. It was so much cheaper. As trade, universities, and city life began to grow in the late Middle Ages, the demand for a cheap writing material soared. Slowly but surely, paper mills began to appear in Italy, France, and Germany. And then came the invention that would make paper truly indispensable: the printing press. In the mid-15th century, Johannes Gutenberg combined movable type with a screw press and oil-based ink. Printing on expensive parchment was possible, but not practical for mass production. Paper was the perfect partner for the printing press. Together, they formed a powerful duo that ignited the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the scientific revolution. Books could now be produced in vast quantities at a fraction of the cost. Martin Luther's 95 Theses, printed on paper, spread across Europe in weeks. Scientific knowledge, once confined to a few scholars, could be shared, debated, and built upon by a whole new community of thinkers. Literacy rates began to climb as books became accessible to the emerging middle class. The world of ideas exploded. The demand for paper skyrocketed. Early European paper was made from linen and cotton rags, and there was soon a rag shortage. People were encouraged to save every scrap of cloth. But as industrialization took hold in the 18th and 19th centuries, a new source material was needed. The answer was found in trees. Inventors developed machines that could grind wood into pulp and then turn that pulp into vast, continuous rolls of paper. This new industrial process made paper cheaper than ever before. It led to the birth of the daily newspaper, the paperback novel, the school textbook, and the endless reams of paper that fuel modern bureaucracy and business. Our entire information ecosystem, from legal contracts and scientific journals to birthday cards and toilet paper, was built on this foundation of wood pulp. Today, we're living in what some call a digital age. And people often talk about the paperless office. And it's true, a lot of our communication has moved online. We send emails instead of letters. We read news on screens, and our photos live in the cloud. But paper is far from gone. Think about the packaging that brings goods to your door. The coffee cup you grab in the morning. The tissues you use when you have a cold. Paper has adapted, finding new roles in a world dominated by pixels. The story of paper is a story about human ingenuity. It's a story of how a simple technology, born from bark and old rags, gave us the power to save our memories, share our thoughts across continents and centuries, and build the complex world we live in today. The next time you hold a piece of paper, take a moment. Feel its texture. Listen to its rustle. You're holding a piece of history, quiet, revolutionary, that truly changed everything. Have you ever scrolled through your phone, swiping past hundreds, maybe even thousands of photos? Selfies, sunsets, your lunch. It's so easy, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder how this all began? How did we first teach light to write, to capture a moment and hold it forever? Today, we're going to travel back in time, not with a time machine, but through the story of a single, blurry image that changed the world. This is the story of the very first photograph. Our journey takes us to early 19th century France, a time of invention and radical new ideas. The air was buzzing with the spirit of the Industrial Revolution. People were fascinated with chemistry, optics, and the idea of capturing reality without a painter's brush. For centuries, the only way to capture a scene was through art. But a few brilliant minds were chasing a seemingly impossible dream: to make a permanent image using only light. Enter Joseph Nice. Forni Pesi. He wasn't a famous scientist or a wealthy aristocrat. He was a curious, persistent inventor living in the French countryside. Nice was obsessed with a new printing process called lithography, but he wasn't a skilled artist. He thought, what if nature could draw its own pictures? What if he could find a substance that hardened when exposed to light, capturing an image onto a plate? He began experimenting with all sorts of materials. He tried silver salts, which were known to darken in sunlight, but he couldn't figure out how to stop the entire image from turning black. The problem wasn't just capturing the image, it was fixing it, making it permanent. For years, he faced failure after failure. Imagine the frustration, working day after day in a dark room, with only faint glimmers of hope. His family and friends probably thought he was chasing a ghost. But Nice was relentless. His breakthrough came from a rather unlikely source: bitumen of Judea. This was a kind of natural asphalt, the same stuff ancient Egyptians used for mummification. Nice discovered that when this bitumen was dissolved, coated on a pewter plate, and exposed to light, the illuminated areas would harden. The unhardened parts, which were in shadow, could then be washed away with a solvent. He called this process heliography, which means sun writing. It was a genius idea. So, in the summer of 1826 or 1827, the exact date is still debated by historians, Nepos set up his experiment. He placed a pewter plate coated with this bitumen mixture inside a camera obscura, which literally means dark room. Was a box with a small hole that projected an outside scene onto an opposite surface. It was a popular tool for artists at the time. Nepos aimed his camera obscura out of the attic window of his country estate, Les Graces, in Saint Loup. He opened the shutter, and then he waited, and waited, and waited some more. This wasn't a quick snapshot. The exposure time wasn't seconds or minutes, it was hours. Some historians believe it might have been as long as several days. Can you imagine the patience that required? For hours upon hours, light streamed through the window, slowly, painstakingly hardening the bitumen on the plate. The sun moved across the sky, casting light on both sides of the buildings in the courtyard, which is why the final image has such an unusual, ethereal quality. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Nepos took the plate from the camera. He washed it with a mixture of lavender oil and white petroleum. As the unhardened, dark bitumen dissolved away, an image slowly emerged. It was faint. It was blurry. It was grainy. But it was there. What he saw was the view from his window. The sloping roof of a building, a pear tree, a barn, and the sky. He had done it. He had captured a real-life scene, a fleeting moment in time, and made it permanent. This image, now famously known as View from the Window at Les Graces, is the world's first surviving photograph. Let's be honest, if you look at it today, it doesn't look like much. It's hard to make out the details. It's not a stunning landscape or a dramatic portrait. It's a quiet, humble view from an attic window. But its significance is monumental. This single image proved that photography was possible. It was the spark that ignited a revolution in how we see and remember our world. Nepos tried to present his invention to the Royal Society in London, but they weren't interested. His process was complex, and he was secretive about the exact details. He returned to France, feeling defeated. Soon after, he partnered with a man named Louis who would later build upon Niapes' work to create a much more practical daguerreotype process. Sadly, Nepos died in 1833 before he could see his invention truly take off. For a long time, he was largely forgotten, overshadowed by but his legacy is this one powerful image. Think about it. Every photograph ever taken, from the portraits of presidents to the images sent back from the Mars rover, from your grandparents' wedding album to the selfie you took this morning, owes its existence to that long, patient exposure from an attic window in France. Nepos wasn't just capturing a view, he was capturing an idea. He was proving that our fleeting moments don't have to disappear forever. He was giving us the power to hold on to light, to freeze time, and to share our reality across generations. Today, the original plate, view from the window at La Grasse, is carefully preserved at the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas at Austin. It's kept in a special oxygen-free case, a fragile relic of a world-changing moment. So the next time you point your camera and click, take a second to think about Nicéphore Niepce and his blurry view. Think about the years of failure, the smelly chemicals, and the incredible patience it took to create that very first sun writing. We live in a world saturated with images, but it all started with one man, one window, and the crazy, beautiful idea that light itself could learn to remember. Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered about its secrets? For thousands of years, so did our ancestors, long before clocks, smartphones, or even written calendars. Humanity's first timekeeper wasn't a device, but a celestial dance happening right above our heads. This is the story of how we learned to read the rhythm of the sky. The story of the lunar calendar. Imagine a world lit only by fire and stars. In this world, the night sky wasn't just beautiful. It was a vital source of information. And the most captivating character in that nightly drama was the moon. It wasn't static like the sun. It changed. One night, it would be a brilliant, full circle, bathing the landscape in a silvery glow. A few nights later, it would be a half-lit smile, then a slender crescent, until it vanished completely, leaving the nights profoundly dark. And then, like magic, a tiny sliver would reappear, promising to grow full once more. This cycle, from new moon to full moon and back again, was predictable. It was a pattern, and for early humans, patterns meant survival. They noticed that this cycle took about 29 or 30 days. This wasn't just a curious observation, it was a revelation. This celestial clock was the foundation for the first calendars. Why was this so important? Well, it helped them track the passage of time in a way they never could before. They could anticipate seasonal changes, plan for hunts, and know the best times for planting and harvesting. The moon's phases became the markers for their lives. Ancient civilizations all over the world, from the Babylonians and Egyptians to the Chinese and indigenous peoples of the Americas, developed their own versions of the lunar calendar. Each new moon marked the beginning of a new month. They gave these months names, often tied to the agricultural seasons or natural events happening around them. The wolf moon in the deep of winter, these weren't just names. There were stories connecting their daily lives to the grand cosmic rhythm. The Babylonians, for instance, were meticulous astronomers. They recorded the moon's phases on clay tablets, creating one of the earliest and most sophisticated lunar calendars. They knew the lunar month was roughly 29.5 days long. This created a bit of a problem. How do you have half a day in a calendar? They solved this by alternating months between 29 and 30 days. It was a simple, elegant solution. Their calendar was so influential it shaped many that followed, including the ancient Hebrew and Islamic calendars, which are still used today. In ancient China, the lunar calendar was, and still is, incredibly important. It's a lunisolar calendar, meaning it tracks both the moon's phases and the Earth's orbit around the sun. This was a brilliant innovation. While the lunar cycle was great for months, it didn't perfectly align with the solar year of about 365 days. A year of 12 lunar months is about 11 days shorter than a solar year. Over time, this would cause the seasons to drift. A summer month would eventually fall in the middle of winter. To fix this, the Chinese added an extra intercalary month every 2 or 3 years. This kept the calendar in sync with these seasons, ensuring that festivals like the Lunar New Year always fell in the right time of year. Think about what this meant for society. It allowed for the coordination of large-scale activities. Religious festivals, community gatherings, and agricultural schedules could all be synchronized. The moon wasn't just a light in the sky. It was a unifying force, a shared clock for entire civilization. It dictated when to celebrate, when to sow, and when to rest. It brought order and predictability to a world that could often feel chaotic and random. Even today, the legacy of the lunar calendar is all around us. The word month itself comes from the word moon. Many major holidays like Easter, Ramadan, and the Lunar New Year are still determined by the lunar cycle. These traditions connect us directly to those ancient skywatchers who first looked up and saw not just a rock in space, but a grand celestial clock. The development of the lunar calendar is a testament to human ingenuity and our innate desire to find order in the universe. It shows how we've always been astronomers at heart, looking to the heavens for answers. It started with a simple observation: the changing face of the moon. From that observation grew a system that would shape civilizations, guide agriculture, and define cultural traditions for millennia. So the next time you see the moon, whether it's a delicate crescent or a radiant full disk, take a moment to appreciate it. You're not just looking at a satellite, you're looking at humanity's first clock, a timeless symbol of our connection to the cosmos. It's a beautiful reminder that for as long as we have existed, we have looked to the sky for guidance. And the moon has always been there, patiently marking the passage of our days. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt a sense of wonder? A feeling of being part of something immense, something truly magnificent. Now, imagine flipping that perspective. Imagine you're out there, floating in the silent, stardusted darkness, and you look back at your home. What do you see? You see a marble of breathtaking beauty, a swirl of white clouds, deep blue oceans and continents painted in shades of green and brown. You see Earth, our home, the blue planet. From this vantage point, borders vanish. The lines we draw on maps, the divisions we create in our minds, they all dissolve into a single, unified whole. All of human history, every joy, every sorrow, every war, every love story has played out on this one tiny, fragile sphere. It's a humbling thought, isn't it, that everything we've ever known, everyone we've ever loved, exists on this beautiful oasis, suspended in the vast cosmic ocean. The first astronauts to see this view, they called it the overview effect. It's a cognitive shift, a profound change in awareness that comes from seeing our planet from a distance. They spoke of an overwhelming sense of connection, not just to their own country or people, but to the entire planet and every living thing on it. They saw Earth not as a collection of separate nations, but as a single, interconnected system, a living, breathing organism. The thin, shimmering layer of our atmosphere, a delicate blue halo, is all that separates us from the cold, empty vacuum of space. It's our shield, our life support, and from out there, you can see just how precious and thin it really is. Let's journey back in time 4.5 billion years. Our story begins in a swirling cloud of gas and dust, a cosmic nursery where stars are born. Gravity, the universe's master sculptor, began to pull this material together. At the center, our sun ignited, a brilliant new star. And in the debris field orbiting it, tiny particles collided, stuck together, and grew. Over millions of years, these small bodies, called planetesimals, merged and coalesced, growing larger and larger, until they formed the planets we know today. And one of them was destined to be special. One of them was Earth. Early Earth was a very different place. It was a hellish landscape, a molten ball of rock constantly bombarded by asteroids and comets. Volcanoes erupted, spewing gases into the sky, beginning the slow process of forming our first atmosphere. It wasn't an atmosphere we could breathe, of course. It was thick with carbon dioxide, water vapor, and nitrogen. But it was a start. Then, a cataclysmic event occurred. A Mars-sized object, which scientists call Theia, slammed into our young planet. The impact was colossal, sending a massive plume of debris into orbit. Over time, this debris came together to form our constant companion, the Moon. This cosmic collision was violent, but it was also crucial. It tilted Earth on its axis, giving us the seasons that dictate the rhythm of life. The Moon's gravitational pull stabilized our planet's wobble and created the tide, the constant ebb and flow of the oceans that would stir the primordial soup. As the planet began to cool, the water vapor in the atmosphere condensed and fell as rain. Not for days or weeks, but for millions of years. This great deluge filled the basins and craters, forming the first oceans. And it was in these oceans, in this primordial soup rich with chemical compounds that the miracle of life began. We still don't know the exact moment or the precise mechanism, but somehow, simple organic molecules organized themselves into the first self-replicating cells. Life had gained a foothold. For billions of years, life remained simple, single-celled organisms floating in the sea. But they were busy. Some of them, the cyanobacteria, developed a revolutionary new trick: photosynthesis. They learned to harness the power of the sun, using sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into energy. And as a byproduct, they released a waste gas, a gas that was toxic to most life at the time, but would prove to be the key to our own existence. That gas was oxygen. This great oxidation event fundamentally changed our planet. It slowly transformed the atmosphere, paving the way for more complex, oxygen-breathing life forms to evolve. It was a planetary-scale makeover. The iron in the oceans rusted and settled, creating the banded iron formations we mine today. The sky, once a hazy orange, began to turn blue. Our world was becoming the blue planet we recognize. Fast forward through eons of the Cambrian explosion saw a dramatic diversification of life. Creatures with shells, skeletons, and complex body plans appeared. Life crawled out of the oceans and onto the land. Giant ferns and forests spread across the continents, further oxygenating the atmosphere. Then came the age of dinosaurs, the colossal reptiles that ruled the earth for over 150 million years. Their reign came to a dramatic end 66 million years ago, when a massive asteroid struck the planet near what is now Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula. The impact triggered a global catastrophe, plunging the world into darkness and causing a mass extinction. But life is resilient. From the ashes of that destruction, new opportunities arose. The age of mammals began, and among them, a group of primates evolved. They learned to walk upright, freeing their hands to make tools. Their brains grew larger and more complex. They developed language, culture, and curiosity. They were us, Homo sapiens. From our origins on the African savanna, we spread across the globe. We crossed continents, navigated oceans, and adapted to every environment imaginable. From the frozen Arctic to the scorching desert, we built villages, then cities, then empires. We looked up at the stars and wondered what they were. We invented science to understand the world around us, and arts to express our place within it. We are the planet's consciousness, the part of Earth that can look back at itself and reflect. All of this entire sprawling, improbable, 4.5 billion year old story has unfolded right here. When you see those satellite images of Earth at night, those glittering webs of light, you are seeing the story of humanity. Each point of light is a city, a hub of dreams, innovation, and connection. It's the physical manifestation of our collective journey, a testament to our ingenuity and our desire to build a better world. But this perspective from space also reveals a stark warning. We can see the smoke from massive wildfires, the plumes of pollution from our industrial centers. We can watch polar ice caps shrink year by year and see the once vibrant green of rainforests replaced by barren brown land. We are, without a doubt, changing our planet at an unprecedented rate. The very systems that have allowed us to thrive are now under threat from our own activities. The overview effect isn't just about feeling a sense of wonder. It's also about feeling a profound sense of responsibility. Seeing Earth as a single, interconnected system makes it clear that our actions have global consequences. The pollution from one continent can affect the weather on another. The health of our oceans impacts everyone, no matter where they live. This realization isn't meant to be discouraging. It's meant to be empowering. We are the first generation to have this godlike view of our world, to see the full picture of our impact. We are the stewards of this blue planet. The challenges we face are significant, from climate change to biodiversity loss. But humanity has always been a species of problems. Our capacity for innovation, cooperation, and empathy is our greatest asset. Think about the journey, from cosmic dust to a living world, from single cells to sentient beings who can leave their own planet and look back. It's a story of incredible resilience and endless potential. The next chapter of the story is unwritten, and we are the ones holding the pen. We have the knowledge and the technology to build a sustainable future, to heal the damage we've done, and to protect this precious home for all the generations that will follow. So the next time you look at a picture of Earth from space, don't just see a beautiful image. See a story. See your story. See the legacy of 4.5 billion years of cosmic and biological evil. See the home we all share. A cradle of dreams floating in the silent darkness. And remember that the future of this beautiful blue planet is in our hands. Let's work together to make it the future we can all be proud of. Thank you for joining me on this journey through space and time. If you found this perspective as fascinating as I do, please like this video, subscribe for more content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What does seeing Earth from space make you feel? Until next time, keep looking up.